Hello everyone. If you like this audiobook and want to listen to more, please consider subscribing. And if you like this video, like it as well, enjoy.
Chapter 71. Ryan jumps down. That's it. Homelander crouched down and looked Ryan in the eye. That feeling of standing up high and looking down at the world is amazing, right? The freedom of the wind rushing past your ears. Doesn't it feel just like when I took you up into the sky? Yeah, Dad. Ryan, your mom has never held you and flown you into the sky. She's never brought you up here either, has she? Ryan listened to his father and nodded honestly. No. Mom's afraid of heights. She doesn't let me come to places like this. Seeing Ryan agree with him, Homelander smiled. And that's exactly why boys need their dads. The two of them stood on the roof, bathed in the warm sunset. From a distance, the scene looked incredibly peaceful and sweet. But it was about time to teach Ryan how to use his powers. When he was Ryan's age, he had already broken the sound barrier, hadn't he? Homelander's mind drifted back to his childhood in the cold Vought laboratory, to those painful memories of researchers pushing him off high platforms again and again to test his limits, throwing him into deadly situations over and over. The laboratory had taught him that instinct only awakened in desperate situations and extreme fear. This was the only way of teaching he knew. Ryan. Homelander suddenly put away his smile and said, I think it's time. Are you ready? Ryan froze. Ready for what, Dad? Are we playing a new game? Homelander pointed at the lawn more than 6 meters below them. Jump down, Ryan. The little guy lowered his head and looked at the green lawn below. Ryan was completely stunned. He instinctively took a step back. Dad, you're not serious, right? It's so high. I don't wanna jump. Ryan, look at me. Homelander's smile was still gentle, but there was no room for argument in it. You're my son. You can fly, just like me. It's instinct. I don't wanna jump. Ryan shook his head. Take a deep breath, son. Homelander crouched down. Close your eyes, then bravely take one step forward. That's all. You'll get it right away. The second you leave the roof, your body will fly on its own. It'll take care of everything. But I can't fly. Ryan was getting anxious. His dad was a superhero with powers, but he did not have any. You're gonna love it. Trust me, son. Homelander kept trying to persuade him. I really can't fly, Dad. You can. I promise you can. Just jump, and you'll discover a whole new world. Trust me, okay? Seeing that nothing was getting through to his father, Ryan's little brain raced, and he kept arguing. Dad, please, don't make me jump. I mean, Grandpa can't even fly. Maybe I took after Grandpa. Maybe I can't fly at all. At that, Homelander froze for a second. That kind of made sense. Now that he thought about it, the little brat actually had a point. What if Ryan really did take after Soldier Boy? But Homelander quickly shook his head. No, definitely not. If I, your dad, can fly, then that means our genes evolved. And since you're my son, you should definitely fly higher and faster than me. Seeing that his father could not be reasoned with, Ryan fell into complete despair. A moment later, Ryan pulled his phone out of his pocket without hesitation and quickly dialed one of the only 2 numbers in his contacts. Seeing his son suddenly take out his phone and make a call, Homelander froze, then asked curiously, who are you calling right now? Ring, click. The call connected. Grandpa, it's Ryan. Ryan called into the phone. At the word, Grandpa, Homelander's eyebrow twitched. Holy shit, this little brat had learned how to tattle. Wait, Ryan, hang up first. Homelander started to panic a little. This is training between father and son. No need to bother your grandpa. Your grandpa hates flying. He might yell at you. Benjamin's voice came from the other end. Who? Ryan quickly said, Grandpa. My dad wants to make me jump off a 6-meter-high roof. He says I can fly. The air went quiet. Homelander was starting to regret buying his son a phone. After a brief second of silence on the other end, Benjamin said, isn't that fucking obvious? Your dad can fly. You're his kid, so of course you can fly too. It's just jumping off a roof. Take a deep breath and jump. Even if you can't fly, you won't get hurt. Don't stand there crying on the roof like a little bitch. It's only 6 meters. You'd be fine from 600. Beep, beep, beep. After cursing him out, Benjamin hung up without the slightest hesitation. Ryan stood there holding the phone, now filled with the dial tone, completely frozen. Homelander, standing beside him, heard that Soldier Boy had not scolded him and had actually agreed. His earlier panic instantly vanished. Homelander smiled. "You hear that, Ryan? Even your grandpa thinks you should jump." Homelander spread his arms excitedly. Crash! From the lawn below came the sharp sound of a ceramic plate shattering. Becca had just come out of the kitchen carrying a plate of washed fruit, and she happened to see the terrifying scene on the roof. "Oh my God, what are you doing?" The fruit plate slipped from Becca's hands and smashed onto the ground, fruit rolling everywhere. Her face went deathly pale as she stared up at Homelander and Ryan standing at the edge of the roof. "Ryan, don't move. Homelander, you animal, get him down from there right now." Chapter 72, Homelander's Soft Heart. "Dad, please." At that moment, half of Ryan's feet were already hanging over the edge of the roof. His fair little face was full of despair. Homelander stared at the fear reflected in those bright blue eyes, eyes exactly like his own, and froze slightly. He had been about to keep coaxing him. For some reason, a scene from his childhood in the lab flashed through his mind. Little John, wearing nothing but a thin hospital gown, had been forced by a group of expressionless scientists onto a towering test platform. Back then, he had looked just like Ryan did now, staring desperately at those adults, those so-called elders, begging them again and again with his eyes. But those scientists had not agreed. They had only told Homelander, "Jump, John, trust us, it won't hurt you." That was probably what they had said back then too. But there had been no way around it. It was to awaken his superpowers, to make him control his superpowers. Homelander's cheek twitched, and a hint of confusion flickered in his eyes. Then he remembered what Ryan had said earlier, worried that because Grandpa can't fly, I inherited that from Grandpa, so I can't fly either. Homelander did not know what to do anymore. If he really made Ryan jump today, Ryan truly would not get hurt, but then what difference would there be between him and those scientists in the lab? Homelander took a deep breath. He looked at Ryan, trembling all over, and sighed helplessly. In the end, his tone softened. "Okay, Ryan, we'll do it another way." Homelander took a small step forward and held out both hands as if ready to catch him. "Here's what you do. Jump down and try to feel the wind. If you really can't fly, Daddy promises you, before you hit the ground, I'll fly over and catch you in an instant. I'm faster than a bullet. Nothing's gonna happen to you. How's that?" Hearing that promise, Ryan froze for a moment. The little guy thought it over as fast as his still immature mind could manage. He had seen how fast Dad was. When Dad took him flying, he could not even keep his eyes open. Since Dad promised he would catch him, then maybe this really could work. No matter what, his begging had worked in the end. Dad still loved him. "Okay, Dad." Ryan gritted his teeth. "Count 3 seconds. After 3 seconds, I'll try to jump down and fly by myself, but you have to catch me, Dad. You really, really have to. Don't lie to me." Becca was stunned, still frantically shouting for Ryan not to do it. Homelander ignored Becca and said, "Okay, don't worry, Ryan, Dad would never lie to you." Homelander smiled and nodded, even gently straightening Ryan's collar. 3. Homelander slowly said the first number. Ryan took a deep breath, clenched his fists, closed his eyes, and tried hard to stop his weak legs from shaking. In his heart, he kept telling himself that when Dad counted down to 1, he would bravely jump. But, just as Ryan was still trying to psych himself up, before Homelander could even say 2, he pressed his broad palm against Ryan's back and shoved him hard. "Down you go." "Ah, fuck." Caught completely off guard, Ryan plunged straight down from the 6-meter-high roof. The sudden rush of weightlessness swallowed him whole. Down below. No. Becca, who had been looking up and staring fixedly at the roof the whole time, completely broke down when she saw it. She had been begging desperately from below, screaming herself hoarse, but nothing had worked. That demon had really pushed her precious son off the roof. Whoosh! Just as Ryan was about to hit the ground, a figure flashed across the ground. Homelander dropped smoothly to one knee and caught the still terrified Ryan in his arms with perfect precision. The whole thing was effortless. Ryan did not feel even the slightest impact. Of course, he did not feel himself fly either. "Ha ha ha ha, see, I told you I'd catch you." Homelander stood up with Ryan in his arms, laughing. But Ryan did not find it funny at all. He gulped down air, his little face deathly pale. Ryan struggled desperately, jumped out of Homelander's arms, and ran without looking back toward Becca as she rushed over. Mommy. Ryan threw himself into Becca's arms. My baby, are you okay? Does anything hurt? Becca held Ryan tightly, trembling all over. Worried and terrified, she still softened her voice to comfort him. It's okay. It's okay. Mommy's here. You're okay, baby. Come on, he didn't even get hurt. Homelander argued. I caught him, didn't I? Sure, he wasn't ready, but this is a necessary step if we're going to unlock his potential. Bottom line, he didn't get hurt at all, right? Not a scratch. After a pause, Homelander added. And, hell, even if I hadn't caught him just now, with the genes in his body, a little 6-meter fall wouldn't have done a damn thing to him. Hearing that pathetic excuse, Becca turned around and glared viciously at Homelander, cursing him outright. You goddamn lunatic, you cold-blooded monster, you inhuman piece of shit. He's 7 years old, how could you do something so cruel to him? You don't deserve to be a father. At Becca's insults, Homelander's eyes shifted slightly. Homelander advanced on Becca step by step and shouted. Listen, I've seen Vought's files. Ryan is the perfect soup child. You know why? Because he's my son, Soldier Boy's grandson, the continuation of the most powerful bloodline in this world. And you, Homelander pointed at her accusingly. You've kept him caged in this fake little world. You're ruining him. You don't deserve to be his father. Ryan, come on, don't listen to this deranged psycho. Becca had no intention of listening to this monster's insane bullshit. She grabbed Ryan's hand and turned to head back inside. The moment he heard the word, deranged, Homelander reached out and grabbed Becca's arm with his large hand. Everything I've done is for my son's own good. But you keep raising him like some little girl. Let go of my mom. Ryan, who had been protected behind Becca the entire time, finally got angry when he saw his father bullying his mother. Ryan used no technique, he acted purely on instinct, reaching out with his two small, fair hands and gripping Homelander's arm as hard as he could. Then, using every bit of strength in his body, he wrenched it outward and shoved Homelander hard. Chapter 73, This is what a real superhero looks like. Under that burst of strength, Homelander was forced back 3 full steps. Homelander froze. His eyes widened as he stared at Ryan, standing several meters away. He was not shocked because the little brat had dared to defy him. What mattered was that Ryan had just released a tremendous force, enough to drive him back several steps. At that moment, Ryan stood firmly in front of Becca, shielding her. His usually clear blue eyes were now glowing red with anger. Those 2 glaring red lights looked exactly like a chibi version of Homelander. Seeing those red eyes, almost ready to fire lasers, Homelander was delighted. He was not angry that his son had attacked him. Instead, he praised him. Good boy. As for Ryan, after that burst of strange strength, he was gasping for breath, and the red glow in his eyes slowly flickered and faded away. The little boy looked down at his hands, then at his father, whom he had shoved back several steps. Fear rose in his eyes. He seemed to realize he might have gone too far. He looked at Homelander, not knowing what to say. But Dad really had been scary just now, and it had looked like he almost hurt Mom. Ryan bit his lip, staring at Homelander with a complicated expression. Ryan. Becca pulled Ryan tightly into her arms, using her own body to block Homelander's line of sight. Holding Ryan close, Becca was terrified. She kept her eyes locked on Homelander, rage burning in her chest. It was all because of Homelander that her son had become like this, but she still did not dare provoke him any further. Becca hated Soups to the bone, and now her own son had awakened superpowers too. Becca quickly carried the silent Ryan back into the house. Seeing that, Homelander's cheek twitched a couple more times. He said helplessly, "Kid's got a hell of a temper." Homelander shook his head, a faint bitter smile tugging at his mouth. He did not force his way in. "We'll take it slow, my little Superman." Homelander murmured under his breath, then turned and shot into the sky with a boom. He would wait until the kid cooled off, then come back in a few days with some new Lego toys. Next time, he might as well bring a Soldier Boy Lego set. Ryan would definitely love that. Vought Tower, Benjamin's office. In front of the massive floor-to-ceiling windows, Benjamin leaned back on the sofa, holding a glass of whiskey on the rocks as he stared at the tablet on the coffee table. On the screen was an extremely blurry screenshot from a street surveillance camera. In the image, a thin, clearly Asian teenage boy was moving warily through the dark alleys of Lower Manhattan. Vice President Anika stood beside him. She pushed up her gold-rimmed glasses and reported in a crisp tone. "Sir, this is the high-risk target our intelligence department just intercepted. Based on data comparison, this Asian teenager is most likely the latest super-terrorist to infiltrate the United States. To avoid causing public panic, I plan to immediately send Starlight and Queen Maeve to carry out a covert pursuit." As Benjamin listened to Annika's report, he drained the strong liquor in his glass in one gulp. He recognized the Asian teenager in the photo at a glance. It was Kimiko's younger brother, Kenji. So Kimiko's brother had finally shown up. In the original storyline, Kenji had terrifying telekinesis. Not only could he snap someone's neck out of thin air, he could even flip a yacht with his bare hands. He was very powerful. And Kenji's appearance probably meant one thing. According to the original storyline, William Butcher's The Boys would likely get involved. Of course, Benjamin was not sure whether that would actually happen. After all, things were already different from the original series. "Send the order. Cancel your deployment plan, Annika." Benjamin stood up and said, "Gather the 7 immediately. Meeting in the top floor conference room in 10 minutes. "Yes, sir." Though Annika was a little surprised, she immediately accepted the order and left. 10 minutes later, on the top floor of Vought Tower, inside the 7 circular conference room, the symbol of supreme authority. The heavy doors were pushed open. Homelander had already arrived. He had happened to be on his way back to Vought, so he returned very quickly. Soon after, Queen Maeve, Starlight, the Deep, A-Train, and Stormfront, who had been slacking off lately, entered the conference room one after another. Benjamin sat in the main seat and tossed a tablet with Kenji's photo onto the center of the table. "This supervillain operation is no longer a 2-person job. I'll lead the team myself. All of the 7 will move out together to capture him." The moment he said that, everyone was shocked. Queen Maeve frowned and said in surprise, "Sir, sending all of the 7 after one Asian supervillain. Isn't that overkill? If he's just an ordinary supervillain, Starlight and I should be able to handle it." Across from her, Stormfront narrowed her eyes, a flicker of doubt flashing through them. In her mind, for Soldier Boy to make such a big move, even lead the team personally, there had to be something special about this monkey-looking Asian boy. "Shut up and let me finish," Benjamin continued. "The reason everyone is going is because the intel shows he isn't alone. Besides this boy, there's also his sister, who is also a supervillain." Benjamin paused, his expression turning extremely stern. "And I have one requirement for this operation. I need them captured alive. No lethal force, and no killing them. After they're captured, bring them back to Vought headquarters in one piece." Hearing that requirement, everyone froze. Starlight blinked in confusion and asked curiously, "Why, sir? They're supervillains." Facing Starlight's question, Benjamin thought for a moment, then gave his reason. "Because they're different from that Frost madman who killed people randomly in the street. According to my investigation, this brother and sister have never hurt innocent civilians. They were abducted by a terrorist organization and forcibly injected with Compound V. They're just poor monsters created for profit by former CEO Stan Edgar. So far, the only people they've killed are the bastards who once imprisoned and abused them. If Vought kills victims like that without even asking questions, victims who were pushed into this against their will, then what makes us any different from the old Vought that treated human life like garbage?" After hearing that, Starlight's beautiful eyes widened. "That actually makes sense." Starlight nodded, looking at Benjamin with even deeper admiration. This was what a real superhero looked like. Chapter 74, The Deep and A-Train, first to reach the battlefield. Benjamin continued, "From now on, during operations, if you run into a supervillain who has hurt large numbers of innocent civilians, isn't in their right mind, and is beyond saving, like that Iceman last time, don't ask for permission. Put them down on the spot. Kill them. But if you encounter someone similar, someone whose nature isn't actually bad, then I want them captured alive and brought back." Benjamin went on, "If they can be recruited, and their abilities make them suited to becoming a superhero, then great. If they refuse, I can use power nullification directly on their superpowers and turn them back into an ordinary person." The moment those words left his mouth, everyone in the conference room, aside from Homelander, was stunned. Homelander instinctively touched the pistol at his waist. Power nullification. Queen Maeve looked at Soldier Boy, her thoughts unreadable. "My God," the Deep shuddered and blurted out, exchanging a look with A-Train beside him. "Ben, since when?" Stormfront stared at Benjamin in shock. If Benjamin really had that kind of ability, didn't that mean he could strip anyone of their superpowers whenever he wanted? What the fuck is there to be surprised about? Go through 40 years of nuclear radiation experiments and maybe you'll get it too. Sorry, Ben. Realizing she had hit a sore spot, Stormfront quickly apologized. Benjamin raised an eyebrow but did not explain further. At that very moment, out on the open sea, a luxury yacht meant for vacations was cutting across the water, heading in a certain direction. Inside a second-floor bedroom on the yacht, an Asian woman in a black top was anxiously signing with both hands at the Asian teenager in front of her. She was Kimiko, and the boy before her, his wrists and ankles locked in heavy chains, his eyes as fierce as a frightened young wolf's, was her younger brother, Kenji, who possessed terrifying telekinesis. Kimiko signed rapidly, pleading with him through her eyes. She was trying to tell her brother to stop killing people. If he went with the boys, this group of hot-tempered but barely decent people, maybe they could still survive. But Kenji would not listen at all. Soon, Kimiko left helplessly. And just like in the original series, Kenji controlled a soda can and opened the chains. Click. Free again, Kenji was about to jump into the sea and escape. Just then, a helicopter happened to pass low over the yacht. He swung his hand sharply, and the attack meant for Butcher instantly turned toward the helicopter instead. Boom! The multi-million-dollar helicopter looked as if it had been slapped by an invisible giant hand. Belching black smoke, it plunged nose first into the sea hundreds of meters away, blasting a towering column of water into the air. Goddamn kid, before Kenji could jump into the water, Kimiko had already thrown herself at him. She forced her brother, who had just shown his power, back down onto the deck and tied him up again. But the boys did not even get a chance to breathe. Bang, bang, two heavy, muffled impacts suddenly came from the bottom of the yacht. The entire hull began shaking violently right after. Fuck, what the hell's going on? Mother's milk was nearly thrown into the sea by the shaking and grabbed the railing for dear life. The hull's taking on water. Frenchie leaned halfway out of the cabin, his face full of panic. Sharks. A whole pack of crazy great whites is ramming the hull. They're attacking the yacht. In just a few dozen seconds, the yacht's waterline began dropping visibly. Faced with the open sea and a yacht that was about to sink, even a mad dog like Butcher had no choice but to make a tactical retreat. Abandoned ship, lifeboat, move. Butcher kicked the lifeboat's cable loose. In the chaos, they tossed the tightly bound Kenji inside, then jumped into a lifeboat fitted with a powerful motor and sped toward the distant coastline at full throttle. But the danger on the water was not over. Behind the lifeboat and on both sides, more than a dozen razor-sharp dorsal fins sliced through the surface, staying right on their tail. The great whites were like trained hunting dogs, refusing to let up. And just as they were about to reach the shallow beach, splash, with a deafening roar of breaking water, an enormous sperm whale burst up from beneath the surface. Standing on top of it were the Deep and A-Train. The Deep struck a cocky pose, staring down the boys and the others. The whale beneath his feet soon kicked up towering white waves with its massive body, making the lifeboat rock wildly. Then the whale charged straight onto the shore and lay across the beach like an unbreakable wall of flesh, completely blocking the lifeboat's landing point. A-Train, the Deep, Butcher, who was driving the lifeboat, fixed his eyes on the two men standing on the whale's back. On the whale's back, A-Train took off his sunglasses, looked down at the sperm whale beneath them, then looked at the Deep beside him like he was staring at an idiot. I mean, bro. A-Train's mouth twitched as he asked, completely baffled, if you can control all this seafood, why the hell didn't you just make the big-ass seafood ram their shitty lifeboat? The Deep smugly adjusted his green-scaled supersuit, raised an eyebrow, and laughed. Bro, I think all that running fried your brain. Mr. Soldier Boy told us over and over in the meeting. We take them alive. If that piece of shit boat flips and the kid with superpowers drowns, Mr. Soldier Boy is gonna twist my head off. After hearing that explanation, A-Train shot back, utterly speechless. Is your head packed full of fucking fish? You could have just controlled a couple of those dolphins you usually party with and had them grab the tied-up supervillain. As for the other assholes with guns on the boat, who gives a fuck if they die? Why the hell did you have to drive a whale onto the beach like a goddamn roadblock? Faced with A-Train's extremely reasonable tactical analysis, Deep froze. Right, why not just have the dolphin snatch the target? Chapter 75, My Lucy. The Deep thought A-Train had a point, but his pride wouldn't let him admit he was wrong. Relax. This interception will work just fine. My sweet Lucy will definitely stop them. Who the hell is Lucy? A-Train asked. This beauty right here under my feet. I named her myself. Cute, right? As he spoke, the Deep crouched down lovingly and stroked the whale's thick hide. Oh, my god, Deep. A-Train covered his face. That's just a damn whale. Don't you dare talk about Lucy like that. ... While the two of them were busy bickering like maniacs, out on the water, the black lifeboat that the Deep had expected to slow down in fear, maybe even turn and run, showed no sign of slowing at all. Instead, the engine roared even louder. Vroom. The Deep's pupils widened in terror. The bow of the black lifeboat lifted high as it pushed to top speed. In the driver's seat, William Butcher didn't look scared in the slightest. A wild grin was stretched across his face. He had the throttle pinned, and the lifeboat came tearing straight toward Lucy, the whale lying across the beach, without slowing down at all. Fuck, these guys are insane. As the fastest man alive, A-Train's reflexes were far beyond any normal person's. Whoosh. Without wasting a single word, A-Train turned into a blue blur and vanished from the whale's back in an instant. The Deep, who still hadn't reacted, was left with his ass in the air and both hands frozen in the middle of petting the whale. He stood alone on the massive whale's back, his face locked in shock. The Deep simply could not understand why anyone would be this crazy. Boom. A dull, thunderous crash rang out across the quiet beach. William Butcher drove the lifeboat straight into the massive body of the sperm whale, Lucy. Driven by sheer momentum, the sharp bow tore through the whale's thick hide and blubber in an instant. Blood blasted into the air like a fountain. Chunks of crimson organs and a flood of gore sprayed everywhere, staining the entire beach a horrifying dark red. Woo! The sperm whale let out one last short, piercing cry. Its massive body convulsed violently, then went completely still, dead beyond any doubt. As for the Deep, who had been standing on the whale's back with his ass sticking out, he didn't even have time to scream before the sudden impact launched him into the air. With a heavy thud, the Deep slammed into the sand. His eyes rolled back, and he passed out cleanly. Behind a huge reef several hundred meters away, A-Train, who had bolted away a split second earlier, watched the blood and guts carnage on the beach. Helpless, he pulled off his goggles and slapped a hand to his forehead. We're literally at the ocean, and Deep still managed to screw it up this badly. A-Train shook his head. But this was no time to complain. He took a deep breath, and the muscles throughout his body exploded with power. Whoosh! A sonic boom rang out as A-Train crossed several hundred meters in an instant, appearing right beside the lifeboat lodged in the whale's innards. A-Train recognized Kimiko the moment she crawled out of the cabin. She was one of the first supervillains he had been responsible for transporting back when he was helping Homelander smuggle Compound V. Without the slightest hesitation, A-Train flickered and appeared behind Kimiko. He reached out, ready to use his terrifying speed to throw her over his shoulder and carry her off to finish the job. But just as his hand was about to touch Kimiko, a sharp, needle-like pain stabbed through his heart. He had just carried the Deep to the beach at high speed, and now the aftereffects of long-term abuse of high-purity Compound V had triggered his heart failure again. A-Train clutched his chest, pain twisting across his face. Right then, before he had even had a chance to recover. Bzzz. An insanely violent telekinesis shockwave slammed head-on into A-Train's chest. Gah! Already in agony, A-Train let out a muffled grunt and was sent flying backward. He skipped across the sand like a stone over water, tumbling more than a dozen meters before finally stopping with a mouthful of sand. The one who attacked him was Kenji, who had just crawled out of the cabin. The instant A-Train clutched his heart, Frenchie had decisively unlocked the handcuffs binding Kenji's hands. Freed from his restraints, Kenji's face was full of fury. He gave the scruffy Frenchman a deep, hard look, then telekinesis flared around his hands again as he prepared to turn and run off on his own. Wait, you can't leave. Frenchie didn't even bother wiping the whale blood off his face before shouting, "Vought's people found us. The 7 are gonna be here any second. If you don't come with us, you won't last one fucking minute alone on this beach." Kenji glanced at him coldly and kept walking, clearly unmoved. "You really want?" Frenchie pointed at Kimiko, who was desperately trying to hold her brother back, and shouted through gritted teeth, "You really want your only sister to get sliced apart by those goddamn superheroes, lasers, or beaten to death, just to protect you?" Those words made Kenji stop dead. He turned back and looked at his sister, her face wet with tears, her eyes pleading with him. Years of imprisonment and torture had taught him not to trust anyone. But in that moment, blood and family still reached Kenji in the end. Kenji shut his eyes in pain, then shook his head hard. Then we go together. Move. Those monsters are coming. Soon, Mother's Milk and Butcher woke up. The 3 members of the boys' squad took Kimiko and Kenji with them and plunged straight into the maze-like urban storm drainage system behind the beach. 5 minutes later, Homelander descended from the sky with Soldier Boy and landed steadily beside the dead sperm whale. Right after that, the Stormfront trio arrived beside them. The moment they stepped onto the beach, the thick stench of blood and rot hit them head-on. The smell made Starlight, who was following behind, gag involuntarily. At that moment, the Deep, who had just woken up, looked utterly devastated. He stroked the sperm whale with both hands, overcome with grief. "Boo-hoo, my Lucy, my poor Lucy, how could you die like this?" The Deep pressed his face against the whale's corpse, heartbroken. "What the fuck are you doing?" Benjamin stepped forward and snapped, "Where's A-Train?" The Deep jumped, looked up, and stammered, "Sir, A-Train got hit, and then he went ahead to track those people down." "And you?" Homelander stood with his hands on his hips, his deep blue eyes filled with utter contempt. He slowly walked up to the Deep, looked down at him, and asked with a cold sneer, "He went after the enemy. So what the hell are you doing here, Deep?" The Deep's scalp went numb under Homelander's stare, but his grief had completely short-circuited his brain. I'm mourning my Lucy, mourning my ass." Bang. Benjamin finally snapped and punched the Deep right in the bridge of the nose. The Deep clutched his nose and cried out as blood started running down his face. "If you say one more fucking word about that goddamn whale in front of me, I'll rip your gills out and make sashimi out of them right now." Benjamin pointed at the Deep's nose and shouted, "Get to the point." What the hell happened? Holding his bleeding nose, the Deep told everyone exactly what had just happened. Chapter 76, Homelander and Butcher. Toward the end, the Deep hesitated, then said, "A-Train. The way he looked just now, I think his heart might be in bad shape, but he still went after them. And it was the same when he and I were looking into the Church of the Collective. A-Train had several moments where his heart seemed to be acting up. Whether he was trying to dodge responsibility or was genuinely worried, the Deep brought up A-Train's heart condition." Benjamin frowned slightly. A-Train's heart problem really had never been fixed. For a speedster soup, being unable to run was basically the same as being half useless. Add in the Deep, another useless piece of shit, and letting them get away was hardly surprising. "Fuck, this was your home turf, and you still let me down." Benjamin sighed, shook his head, and cursed. "Split up and search," Benjamin shouted to the others. Still, Benjamin wasn't counting on Maeve or Starlight, whose speed was nothing special. He wasn't counting on the Deep to find anyone, either, and he definitely wasn't counting on A-Train with his bad heart. Most likely, Stormfront and Homelander would find them first. And who knew whether Stormfront would actually listen to him if she passed through a black neighborhood? Better to beat them to it and find the target first. The group quickly entered the maze-like flood control tunnels. The inside of the flood control tunnel was dark and damp, thick with the stench of sewage and the rotten smell of decaying moss. The huge concrete pipes were like the guts of a labyrinth, branching in every direction and stretching down into darkness. The moment the 7 entered the passage, they split up. Homelander and Stormfront, the 2 soups who could fly and move at extreme speed, turned into 2 blurs almost instantly. With a sharp crack of displaced air, they vanished into the pitch-black depths of the tunnel, searching non-stop for the supervillain. Benjamin, meanwhile, stayed behind and jogged at an easy pace. He carried the heavy White Eagle shield in one hand, his military boots splashing through the standing water with dull, wet slaps. At the other end of the passage, Butcher was leading the boys in a frantic escape through the maze. Suddenly, 2 crimson points of light flared in the darkness ahead. A figure slowly emerged, blocking their only way out. Homelander. He stood there casually, hands clasped behind his back, head tilted slightly, his red glowing eyes studying the mortals in front of him like a bunch of rats. When Homelander's gaze finally landed on the bearded man holding a gun, the red glow in his eyes slowly faded. He paused for a second, then the corner of his mouth curled into a deeply amused smile. Butcher, too, didn't back away in fear when he saw Homelander. Instead, he stopped. The two archenemies finally faced each other head-on for the first time in that dark, stinking sewer. William Butcher. Homelander's voice echoed through the empty passage. Former CIA agent. The man who blew up my colleague Translucent. I finally get to meet you. Homelander took a small step forward, his voice growing a little excited. But, your target was never Vought, was it? It was me. You went through all that trouble, wrecking shit everywhere, even killing Translucent, one of the 7, even putting your own life on the line. What do you want from me? Money, fame, or are you trying to prove something to me with this incredibly stupid little stunt? Facing one of the strongest supes on Earth, Butcher not only refused to lower his gun, he gave him a wicked grin. What do I want from you? Butcher raised an eyebrow, smiling at Homelander. You think way too much of yourself, you caped freak. I've only got one goal. To hurt you right down to the fucking bone. Homelander froze for a moment. Ever since he was a child, in this world, no ordinary mortal had ever dared challenge him to his face with such pure, undisguised malice, so intense it almost felt fanatical. Aside from his father Benjamin, aside from the now dead Stan Edgar and Vogelbaum, almost everyone in the world either blindly worshipped and feared Homelander, or looked up to him with the same reverent awe as the common people. He was used to being feared, used to fake praise. So when hatred this pure, without a single trace of anything else, appeared in front of him, Homelander didn't feel the immediate urge to slice the man in half with his lasers. He had always respected people who weren't afraid of him. Edgar before, Vogelbaum, and now, Butcher, and this was the first time anyone had dared face him this honestly. Boom, a deafening crash shattered the standoff. Kenji, who had been hiding behind the boys, suddenly rushed out of the shadows. He threw both hands upward. He wasn't attacking Homelander at all. He was attacking the sewer itself. As his terrifying telekinesis erupted, the massive concrete slab beneath Homelander's feet instantly collapsed and caved in. At the same time, the support pillars above the passage were snapped apart by psychic force. Hundreds, even thousands of tons of rubble, rebar, and dirt came crashing down like a violent landslide. Before Homelander could take flight, the mountain-heavy debris buried him underground. The violent collapse didn't just bury Homelander. It also smashed a massive hole through the ceiling of the passage, opening a direct path to the surface. Blinding sunlight poured in through the opening. Without the slightest hesitation, Kenji seized that split-second chance, leapt upward, and escaped from the boys. Chapter 77. Capturing the siblings alive. Seeing her only family run away again, Kimiko panicked. She scrambled up the rubble after him, desperately chasing toward the opening above. The siblings' figures quickly disappeared into the sunlight. Butcher coughed hard, choking on the falling dust. He raised his gun and was just about to climb over the rubble after them. Butcher, stop. Frenchie grabbed Butcher's arm hard and shouted, we have to get the fuck out of here right now. Didn't you see? Homelander came in person. That means the 7 are probably all out today. The Deep and A train are here, Homelander's here too. Stormfront and Soldier Boy have got to be close. Frenchie pointed at the pile of rubble. Homelander only needs a few seconds to dig himself out. Once he's free, we're all dead. We need to move now. Butcher stared hard at the opening above. He still hadn't caught that supervillain. He still hadn't gotten the ironclad evidence he needed to bring down Vought. More importantly, Mallory had promised him that once the mission was done, she would give him Becca's address. He was one step away, running off like some beaten dog. Butcher would rather die than swallow that. No time, move. Mother's Milk rushed over too and grabbed Butcher by the collar. In the end, reason won out over madness. Butcher let out a furious, humiliated curse. With no other choice, he followed Frenchie and Mother's Milk while Homelander was still trapped, scrambling through another extremely hidden sewage pipe and fleeing the scene in disgrace. As for Kimiko, Frenchie was worried sick, but Kenji was her baby brother. It made sense for Kimiko to chase after him, and Frenchie could only let her go. Up on the surface, Kenji ran, panting hard, into a residential parking lot packed with cars as he looked for a way out. Thud, a figure tackled him from behind. It was Kimiko. She pinned her brother's shoulders down tight and signed frantically at him. She told him she loved him, her dust-covered face full of desperation and pleading. Kenji looked at his sister, a flash of painful conflict crossing his eyes. But just as the siblings were caught in that moment, "You too." Benjamin walked over slowly with his shield in hand, looking down at the desperate siblings from above. Finally fucking found you, Soldier Boy. Kenji and Kimiko's pupils shrank as they stared at the shield-wielding monster. They had seen this man's terrifying record on TV. Not long ago, he had beaten more than 30 supes without taking a scratch. He was also the strongest first-generation supe. Run, that was the only thought that flashed through both their minds at the same time. Against a monster on that level, neither of them had any desire to fight. Kimiko grabbed her brother's hand, and the two of them bolted. You really think you can run? Benjamin gave a cold sneer and chased after them. Then his wrist snapped forward, and the shield flew from his hand. In an instant, the shield sliced clean into Kimiko's lower back from behind. Ah! With a shrill scream, the shield severed Kimiko's spine along with half her waist and abdomen, sending blood spraying everywhere. She collapsed face-first to the ground, while the shield clanged and buried itself deep in the wall of the apartment building ahead, smashing a huge hole straight through it. Some of the black residents inside were startled, but luckily, Kimiko's body had bled off some of the shield's momentum when it was thrown. Otherwise, it might have punched through the wall and killed some of the residents inside. Hearing the commotion, the whole black family looked out the window. Only then did they realize it was Soldier Boy. From the look of it, Soldier Boy was chasing down supervillains. Sis. Seeing Kimiko lying in a pool of blood, Kenji, who had been running ahead, was so furious his eyes nearly split. He turned around and glared at Soldier Boy. Kenji roared. In the next instant, every ounce of telekinesis in his body erupted without restraint. Buzz. An invisible force instantly swept over the entire parking lot. Under the control of that terrifying telekinesis, the dozen or so parked cars around them all rose into the air. Then the cars came smashing wildly toward Benjamin. The black residents broke out in a cold sweat, worried that if Soldier Boy got crushed to death, the supervillains might hurt them. What those residents had not considered was that if Soldier Boy had arrived one step later, the one who hurt them would not have been a supervillain, but the superhero Stormfront. ... Boom, boom, boom. Deafening crashes rang out one after another. Benjamin had no intention of dodging. He let the heavy cars slam down over him and bury him completely. Seeing that, Kenji gasped for breath, a flicker of satisfaction flashing through his eyes, as if he had finally taken revenge. Even if that could not hurt Soldier Boy, it should at least hold him back for a while, just like before. But his satisfaction lasted less than 3 seconds. Crack, crack, crack. Suddenly, explosive sounds came from inside the pile of cars. Then, boom, the dozens of tons of wrecked cars were blasted outward in every direction by a terrifying explosion, as if they were nothing more than a pile of flimsy foam boards. Fortunately, Benjamin had slightly controlled the strength of the nuclear blast. Otherwise, the car wreckage and debris might have blown up the entire building where the black residents lived. They were startled again, staring at Benjamin in awe. A very small number of the slightly smarter residents fled the scene. The less clever ones stayed where they were, staring blankly at everything. Benjamin stood in the middle of the rubble and brushed a little dust off his supersuit. Forget being injured, not a single hair on his head was out of place. Against level 6 defense, an impact at that level was completely useless. That all you got? Benjamin slowly approached. That's impossible. Kenji was completely stunned. He stared at the unscathed monster in front of him, his brain completely shutting down. Benjamin did not give him any more time to think. He took one step forward, activating super speed LV1, and appeared in front of Kenji in a flash. His sandbag-sized fist smashed into Kenji's face. Thud. Kenji's eyes rolled back, and he collapsed to the ground unconscious. Benjamin pulled out a pair of Vought superalloy handcuffs from his waist and locked the kid's hands tightly behind his back. As long as he could not wave his hands around to cast, the kid had no superpowers. After that, Benjamin turned and looked at the ground. By now, Kimiko's freakish self-healing had already kicked in. The horrifying wound across her waist was closing at a speed visible to the naked eye. Kimiko was struggling to get up from the ground and keep fighting. Benjamin strode over and kicked her back down just as she had managed to rise halfway. Without a word, Benjamin bent down, clamped both hands around Kimiko's head with brutal efficiency, and twisted hard. Crack! The crisp sound of breaking bone rang out. Kimiko's neck snapped instantly, her head drooped limply, and she fell back into a state of suspended animation. Before she could heal, Benjamin pulled out a Vought rope and tied Kimiko up tight, wrapping her like a rice dumpling. The fight was completely over in less than a minute. Cheers rose from the black residents. Watching Soldier Boy deal with two supervillains so cleanly and decisively, they saw him as practically unstoppable. Just then, with a flash of purple lightning, Stormfront finally arrived at the scene. When she saw the two supervillains captured alive on the ground, and Benjamin calmly puffing on a cigar like nothing had happened, a faint look of surprise crossed Stormfront's sharp, heroic face. Chapter 78, Super Tracking. My God, Ben, I honestly have no idea how you pulled that off. Stormfront stepped forward, looking at the two captives, neither of whom showed even the slightest sign of having resisted. You don't have super speed, and you can't fly. So why is it that every time we're on a mission, you always find the target before I do, then wrap up the fight so damn cleanly? How the hell does that work? Benjamin had no idea what to say. It wasn't like he could tell her he had super tracking powers. You useless idiots are slow as hell. Where's Homelander? A short while later, Homelander finally drifted down from the sky at an unhurried pace. Right now, he looked pretty damn rough. His iconic supersuit was covered in sewer dust and sludge. Clearly, getting buried alive under Kenji's rubble down below had taken him some effort to crawl out of, leaving him filthy and disheveled. When he saw that Benjamin was not only unharmed, but had already captured the targets alive with flawless efficiency, Homelander froze in place, suddenly at a loss for words. Stormfront glanced at the black spectators watching nearby, irritation stirring in her chest. But with Benjamin standing there, she had no choice but to hold back. Soon, Queen Maeve, Starlight, A-Train, and the Deep arrived one after another. The seven were all present. Benjamin looked at the team in front of him, supposedly the strongest fighting force on Earth, yet every single one of them was more useless than the last. He shook his head in disgust. In the end, it still came down to him, an old man over a century old, stepping in personally. The Deep and A-Train really were a pair of worthless idiots. A-Train was at least a little understandable, with the heart condition and all. But the Deep was just worthless beyond saving. I don't even know what the hell to say to you people. Fuck, you're a bunch of deadweight morons. Benjamin sighed and cursed. At Benjamin's scolding, Homelander actually looked a little hurt. He wasn't sure whether he had disappointed Benjamin. He wanted Benjamin's approval, but now he had screwed everything up. Starlight and Maeve exchanged a look. The two of them had basically been bystanders the entire time too, but there was nothing they could do about it. They were not exactly fast, after all. All right, let's head back, Benjamin said. A dozen minutes later, a beat-up black van pulled up discreetly at the corner of the street. Butcher, Mother's Milk, and Frenchie slipped out and moved in quietly. But when they saw the empty parking lot, along with the wreckage of cars that had been flipped and crushed into scrap by terrifying force, despair sank deep into all three of them. Shit, Frenchie dropped to his knees, staring at the pool of blood that belonged to Kimiko, both hands gripping his hair in anguish. Kimiko and Kenji were running this way. I know they were, but now there's not a damn soul here. Everything's wrecked, they must have been taken. The thought of that girl, savage as a wild animal on the outside but fragile and kind underneath, falling into the hands of Vought's bunch of freaks made Frenchie feel a sharp pain in his chest. Those goddamn soup siblings, all they do is fuck everything up. Butcher cursed, pissed off. If Kenji had not butted in halfway through, he might still have had a chance to grab that bastard and trade him to Mallory for Becca's location. Now he had nothing. Kimiko is not some goddamn soup. Hearing Butcher insult her, Frenchie shot back, she's a victim. She was just trying to save her brother. All soups deserve to die. Butcher snapped, shut up, both of you, stop it. Mother's Milk, who had been silent the whole time, stood at the edge of the ruins. Even though he had stopped his two teammates from arguing, he himself had fallen deep into hatred. Mother's Milk clenched his fists. Soldier Boy, Vought Tower, the highest level soup detention facility. There were no cold iron bars here, only minimalist pure white walls and reinforced glass, the kind of place that made it easy to lose all sense of time. Benjamin walked down the white corridor with steady steps. Behind him, Vice President Anika followed closely in her high heels, carrying a top-secret PR proposal she had just drafted. To be fair, Anika had striking features, especially her beautiful large eyes. Dressed as a vice president. Sir, this capture operation was a huge success. Anika was visibly excited. The seven deployed in full force, and with you personally leading the team, this is absolutely major news. I suggest we immediately hold a globally broadcast press conference and show the public these two captured super-terrorists. Not only would this send a powerful warning to the enemies hiding in the shadows, it could double Vought's stock price this quarter. Save your bullshit, Anika. If you want that, go find Homelander and the others. Benjamin did not even look back, dousing her enthusiasm without mercy. And another thing, Vought isn't a Hollywood talent agency anymore. I don't need to act like some circus clown, wagging my tail in front of the cameras begging for praise just because I caught a couple of rats. Anika went rigid and lowered her head respectfully. Yes, sir. Anika watched Soldier Boy's back as he walked away, admiration shining in her eyes. He pushed open the heavy door to Pure White Cell No. 1. Kimiko was bound tightly to an interrogation chair with specially made ultra-strong alloy chains. At the sound of the door opening, she snapped her head up and glared viciously at Benjamin as he walked in. Benjamin stopped in front of her and looked down at the girl, whose face was full of hostility. He did not use violence. He simply waved a hand. With a click, the electronic lock restraining Kimiko's right hand opened. Then he tossed a folder and a black marker onto the metal table in front of her. I know you're mute, so unless you want this to hurt, we'll talk this way. Benjamin pulled over a chair, sat down, and lit a cigar. Kimiko rubbed her wrist, which had turned purple from the restraints, and gave him a cold look. The next second, she grabbed the marker, yanked off the cap, and, fueled by rage, wrote 7 huge English letters across the clean A4 paper. Then she slapped it down in front of Benjamin. Fuck you, huh? Benjamin did not get angry. Instead, he shrugged, looking almost speechless. The girl's temper really was a little like his own. Come to think of it, once she could talk, that thunderous mouth of hers was pretty similar to his too. Then again, plenty of people had pretty damn foul mouths. Save your strength, kid. I don't have time to waste on this. Benjamin exhaled a mouthful of smoke, his deep eyes fixed on Kimiko. I'm not going to feed you a bunch of useless crap either. I know your background, and I know your abilities. I know your superpowers came from that bullshit terrorist organization, the Shining Light Liberation Army, forcibly injecting you with Vought's drug. At the mention of Shining Light Liberation Army, the hand Kimiko held the pen with trembled hard, and shock and hatred flashed through her eyes. Chapter 79, Becca's Address. Now, I'm giving you 2 choices. Benjamin held up 2 fingers. First, join us, become one of Vought's superheroes. I'll give you the best treatment and the best resources. Second, I personally strip the superpowers out of your body, turn you back into a powerless ordinary person, then toss you out onto the street. After that, whether you go home or do whatever the hell else, that's up to you. Kimiko froze. She stared hard at the demon in front of her, the one who had just snapped her neck without the slightest hesitation. Strip away her superpowers and turn her into an ordinary person. How was that even possible? But looking into Benjamin's cold, serious eyes, she had the feeling he probably wasn't lying. As for the first choice, becoming muscle for Vought, the root of all this evil. Kimiko gritted her teeth, and a flash of fierce resistance crossed her eyes. She would rather die than agree to that. Seeing the struggle and distrust in Kimiko's eyes, Benjamin stood up. Forget it, a choice like this affects your whole damn life, so take your time thinking it over. We've got plenty of time here. When he reached the door, Benjamin suddenly stopped, turned his head slightly, and said, by the way, speaking from experience, I'd recommend the first choice. Become a superhero who can control her power. After all, in this fucked up world, you and your brother aren't the only kids who've been persecuted by the Shining Light Liberation Army and ripped away from their families. Don't you want to tear that organization out by the roots with your own hands? Or don't you want to save the other kids being persecuted? They might be suffering under all kinds of terrorist groups, or they might be suffering under the Vought that Edgar used to control. My goal is to stop all of it. Bang. With that, the door shut. In the empty, pure white cell, Kimiko was left sitting alone in the chair, dazed. She stared at the tightly closed door, Benjamin's last words echoing in her mind. After leaving cell No. 1, Benjamin stopped by cell number 2 next door, where Kenji was being held. Unlike Kimiko's struggle, Kenji's interrogation was a total failure. The kid had been completely brainwashed by the Shining Light Liberation Army. During the time he was held by the terrorist organization, he had seen the US military and Vought's superheroes join forces to bomb his hometown, slaughter his village, and kill nearly all of his people and friends. Deep down, the terrorist organization was his family, while America and Vought were sworn enemies. Faced with Benjamin's threats and offers, Kenji just spat at him like a rabid dog, cursing non-stop, refusing to listen to a single word. After thinking it over, Benjamin decided to wait a while. If Kenji really couldn't be controlled, then he would just give him a chest blast. As for Kimiko, Benjamin already had a plan. He intended to let Starlight handle the persuasion. Starlight's naive, kind, deeply empathetic saintly nature was basically the perfect medicine for a girl like Kimiko, prickly on the outside but starved for love underneath. Besides, in the original series, they had been the boys' teammates fighting side by side. They should have some interesting chemistry. Late at night, on the outskirts of New York City, rain fell without stopping. A black SUV was parked beside an almost deserted street. Butcher, wearing his signature long black trench coat, leaned against the car door and smoked hard. Rainwater dripped down his hair, and his bloodshot eyes locked onto a black sedan approaching from up ahead. The door opened, and Mallory stepped out with her cane. She quickly took a sealed manila envelope from her coat pocket, walked over, and handed it to Butcher. Butcher froze for a split second. The fingers holding his cigarette trembled as he snatched the envelope and tore it open. Inside was a single slip of paper, with coordinates written on it. The secret Vought community where Becca was being held. I'm not sure this address is 100% accurate. It's Vought's highest level secret, after all. Mallory looked Butcher in the eye, her voice low as she warned him. But even if it's real, Butcher, you need to understand something. That place is a death trap. You go in, you might not come back. Security is extremely tight. Butcher stared hard at the slip of paper. After a long while, he lifted his head. His stubbled face showed no expression, and his voice was rough. Colonel Mallory, far as I remember, I didn't finish the job you gave me. Faced with Butcher's question, Mallory fell silent. Rain soaked the female agent's shoulders. For once, a trace of guilt and exhaustion flickered in her eyes. Butcher, I'm only giving you information that should have been yours a long time ago. Mallory sighed and met Butcher's gaze directly. All these years, I was the one who refused to tell you the truth. Not letting you go look for her was my fault. I kept steering you on purpose, kept making you go after Homelander like a rabid dog, using your hatred. This address is something I owe you. Hearing that, Butcher carefully tucked the slip of paper close to his body. So what am I supposed to do next? Butcher turned and pulled open the car door as he asked. Find a new supervillain if you can. Mallory tightened her grip on her cane. If that doesn't work, I'll contact that cult fraud named Alistair. I'll use the dirt those superheroes don't want anyone seeing, plus the smuggling intel from the Church of the Collective, and accuse Vought directly at the hearing. Got it. Butcher climbed into the driver's seat. Sitting behind the wheel, his chest rose and fell violently. Becca. Butcher shouted that name in his heart, longing flickering in his eyes. No matter how many armed guards were waiting there, no matter whether the road ahead was hell itself, this time, he was bringing his wife home. As long as Becca came back, everything would be fine. In the end, everything Butcher did was because of Becca. If Becca came back, he wouldn't need to go after Homelander, and he wouldn't need to target Vought or the terrifying soldier boy. Once Becca was back, they would leave the country right away and find somewhere Vought could never reach them. But what Butcher didn't know was that Becca might not want to leave with him anymore. Chapter 80. Butcher meets Becca. In the Vought secret community, beneath an abandoned overpass hidden in a surveillance blind spot. Butcher pressed himself against the bridge pier's cold concrete wall. With the extraordinary counter-surveillance skills of a former top CIA agent, he had forced his way into this unmonitored blind spot inside a steel cage so secure that not even a fly should have been able to get in. Before long, the sound of a car approached. Becca drove up. Becca. Butcher was shaking with emotion. The moment Becca got out of the car, she threw herself at him without a second thought and crashed into Butcher's broad, warm embrace. The two of them held each other tightly beneath the cold overpass. 8 years. A full 8 years of hell, living like the Walking Dead. In this moment, she was finally free. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Billy. This is my fault. I shouldn't have kept it from you. Becca buried her face against Butcher's chest, sobbing as she poured out 8 years of fear and pain. No, this ain't your fault, it's mine. I should have protected you. I should have been there for you. Butcher held Becca's thin face in his hands, his eyes bloodshot. He had thought he would never cry again in his life. But now, hot tears poured down his cheeks. After that brief moment of warmth, Butcher wanted to take Becca away. "Billy, I can't go with you." Becca took a step back, her eyes full of pain and inner struggle. "Why?" Butcher froze, then said urgently, "That cape-wearing freak locked you up here. Vought's a complete mess right now. This is our only shot at getting out. You have to come with me." Butcher still did not know that if Becca were just one woman, Vought would never have bothered building such a massive secret community to imprison her. At that moment, Butcher still believed Homelander had locked Becca away here purely to satisfy his own desires. Because I still have Ryan." Becca took a deep breath, as if using up every last bit of strength she had, and finally told the cruel truth to the husband she loved most. "Billy, I've been living here for 8 years, and I gave birth to a child. His name is Ryan, he's Homelander's biological son." When Butcher heard that, he went completely blank. Ryan, Homelander's kid, for 8 years, he had lived like a ghost, searching for his wife. Every single day, he had planned how to carve Homelander into pieces. But his wife, not only was she alive, she had spent 8 whole years in this pretty little secret community, raising the bastard child of the enemy who raped her, the sick freak who ruined everything they had. All Butcher felt was rage and grief. Yet when he lowered his head and saw Becca's terrified, helpless eyes, like a startled deer's, his heart twisted again. "It's okay, Becca, it's okay." Butcher stepped forward and pulled Becca back into his arms, comforting her in a hoarse voice. "I told you, it wasn't your fault. It was an accident. You've been locked up in this shithole the whole time. You didn't have a choice. You've suffered enough." Butcher also understood now why Becca had been kept here. It was not because of Becca, but because of Homelander's child. Vought wanted to raise a new little Homelander. Hearing her husband comfort her, Becca's tears fell even harder. "Then, why don't we take the boy, Ryan, with us?" Butcher knew Becca. Once she made up her mind, nothing could change it. If he tried to drag her away without Ryan, she would absolutely kill herself on the spot. So they had no choice but to take Ryan too. "Go get him, then I'll take both of you out of here. We'll get the hell away and start over. From now on, I'll be Ryan's dad." Butcher did not mean those words willingly. After all, that meant taking his enemy's bastard child with them. More than that, the thing he hated most in the world was soups. But for Becca, he could only compromise. Becca was his whole world. When Becca heard that Butcher was actually willing to accept Ryan, joy appeared on her face. "Really, Billy, you're really willing to take us both? You don't mind who Ryan is?" "Of course not. He's your child. How could I mind?" Butcher said, but when a woman becomes a mother, her instincts are razor sharp. Even though Butcher's voice was gentle and his act was almost perfect, Becca still caught the disgust buried deep in those bloodshot eyes. Besides, what kind of man was Butcher? He was a rabid dog who would do anything to kill Soups. How could he truly accept a superpowered monster with Homelander's blood running through his veins? Becca knew it would not work. "You're lying to me, Billy, you can't accept him." "Becca, listen to me," Butcher said anxiously. Meanwhile, in a small cabin a few kilometers from the overpass, Homelander opened the door with an eager smile on his face, holding an extremely delicate limited edition, Soldier Boy, figure in his hand. He had specially brought it from Vought headquarters today, planning to use it as a gift to repair his father-son relationship with Ryan. "Ryan, look what Daddy brought you." Homelander's voice cut off abruptly. In the spacious living room, Ryan was the only one there, lying on the carpet and drawing. "Ryan, where's your mom?" Homelander's brow furrowed slightly. His instincts told him something was wrong. "Mom said she was going out to throw away the trash and take a walk." "She's been gone for a while, Dad." Ryan answered obediently. He had already stopped being angry. It was the same as always. Kids got mad fast and cooled off just as fast. The smile vanished from Homelander's face in an instant. A walk in the middle of the night. Becca, that woman who guarded Ryan like he was her whole damn life, would never leave him home alone when she knew Homelander could show up at any moment. "Oh, yeah, then you keep playing. Daddy's going to pick up Mom." "Thanks, Dad," Ryan said happily. Homelander gently handed the figure to Ryan, then turned and walked out of the cabin. The instant the door closed, Homelander's pupils widened, red light flickering in his eyes as he activated super hearing and super sight. For him, the strongest godwoman on earth, finding someone inside this closed community of only a few square kilometers was easier than drinking water. Homelander shot into the air and began searching. Within seconds, his super hearing caught 2 heartbeats and a familiar voice beneath the overpass in the distance. Hey, so a rat really did sneak in. Chapter 81, Choose a husband or choose a son. Under the overpass, Butcher and Becca were still arguing. Becca, have you lost your fucking mind? You'd rather stay with that freak's bastard than leave with me, your actual husband? Butcher asked, and I mean it. I can raise Ryan. The two of them were standing by the trunk, pulling back and forth. Just then, footsteps echoed through the dark. Tap, tap. Now, let's see who's putting on this touching little family drama under a pitch-black bridge. Homelander walked slowly out of the shadows, hands clasped behind his back, his steps smooth and graceful. That signature fake smile hung at the corner of his mouth. His gaze moved between the terrified Becca and the wary Butcher. Becca flinched and stumbled back several steps. But Butcher did not back down. The moment he saw Homelander, he shoved Becca behind him and raised the gun in his hand. Homelander looked at Butcher and clapped with exaggerated admiration. Clap, clap, clap. William Butcher, I have to say, I'm starting to see you in a whole new light. Homelander tilted his head and said, a powerless human like you actually slipped through Vought's tightest security and found your way to a place that doesn't even exist on any map. That kind of persistence really is fascinating. Homelander's smile widened, smugger than ever. But sadly, Butcher, you spent 8 years tearing yourself apart chasing this, suffering through all that pain, and in the end, you were still one step behind me. His tone dripped with triumph. After all, I found this place before you did not long ago. I was the one who left the noblest bloodline inside the woman you love. And now, I'm the one taking your place as that adorable boy's father. Faced with Homelander's vicious humiliation, Butcher said nothing. Though it was less a provocation than a boast, Butcher still caught one important detail. Homelander had only found this place recently, which meant Vought had kept him in the dark too. Why? Because Soldier Boy had returned. After taunting Butcher, Homelander stared at him again with great interest. Then he tilted his head slightly, his eyes sliding toward Becca, who stood off to the side trembling, watching Butcher with worry written all over her face. Looking at this doomed pair of lovers, reunited after 8 years of being torn apart, Homelander's lips slowly stretched into a grin. Butcher, honestly, I really do admire you. Homelander kept his hands behind his back and even strolled forward a couple of lazy steps. You're like a cockroach that just won't die no matter how many times someone stomps on it. Honestly, I'd love to keep playing this little game with you. It's made my boring life a lot more entertaining. But, his tone shifted sharply. The smile disappeared, replaced by open irritation. Homelander pointed at Becca. I have to say, your lovely wife is a real pain in the ass. Especially when I come here, thrilled to see my son, and she always finds some way to ruin it for me. At that, Homelander suddenly leaned closer to Butcher, lowered his voice, and said, so, William Butcher, since this whole thing started with that little accidental one-night stand between me and Becca, I'm going to be merciful and give you a choice. Take that precious Becca of yours and get the hell out of this community. Right now, get out of my sight and never come back. Homelander spread his hands and continued, as for Ryan, leave him to me. I'll take a little time and tell my son, with all the proper regret, that his mother cruelly abandoned him for some crude wild man. That way, Ryan will only have me in this world, me, his all-powerful father, and his grandfather. That's practically a perfect ending, isn't it? Hearing Homelander say it so casually, Butcher's face shifted, because Homelander had just said exactly what he himself had been thinking. Butcher's breathing grew uneven. For 8 years, he had lived like a rat in the sewers. The only thing keeping him alive had been revenge for Becca. And now Becca was alive, and Homelander was willing to give her back to him. For Butcher, it was a temptation he almost could not refuse. Butcher turned his head and stared at Becca. The meaning in his eyes could not have been clearer. But under her husband's burning, hopeful gaze, Becca's body went stiff again. Her lips trembled as she looked at Butcher and shook her head. No. Becca's voice was full of pleading. No, William, no. Ryan can't be without me. He can't be without his mother. Becca went on, you know better than anyone, William. What does a soup child become without a mother to guide him? He can't grow up like Homelander. I can't abandon my own child. I just can't. Shut up, Every trace of amusement vanished from Homelander's face. Deep in his eyes, two crimson lights began to gather. That was why he truly hated Becca. Every time she spoke, she hit the rawest nerve buried deep inside him. "You bitch, you dare bring that up in front of me?" Homelander glared at Becca. "I'm giving orders here, I'm not discussing it with you." Homelander's voice turned threatening. "Becca, listen carefully. Either you get the hell out of here with Butcher right now, or I crush his bones inch by inch right in front of you, then burn his head to ash. And don't forget, he's the prime suspect in Translucent's murder. If I take him out, I'll be avenging Translucent while I'm at it." Butcher looked at Becca again. This man, who had always been hard as iron, now had a rare pleading look in his eyes. It was a brutally cruel choice. A mother forced to choose between the husband she had been separated from for 8 years and the son she had carried in her womb. Butcher clenched his fists, his nails digging deep into his palms. God, how he hoped Becca would choose to come back to him. He was only Homelander's son. By all rights, she should have hated the son of the man who raped her. And yet fate seemed to take a sick pleasure in grinding salt into Butcher's wounds. Becca closed her eyes. When she opened them again, the despair in them said everything. Once again, she had let Butcher down. "No, you can't do this. Please, don't." Becca shook her head in despair, her body going weak as she collapsed to the ground. "Enough bullshit, choose." Homelander advanced one step at a time, looming over her. "Which is it, lose your husband, or lose your son?" 3 seconds. 3. 2. Chapter 82, Poor Butcher. As Butcher watched Becca fall apart completely, the last glimmer of hope in his eyes vanished. So in these past 8 years, he had been the only one stuck in place. But this was Becca's decision, and he respected it. Butcher's eyes quickly turned cold and resolute. Without the slightest hesitation, he stepped forward and planted himself firmly in front of Becca, putting his own chest in the path of Homelander's heat vision, ready to take it the moment it erupted. Butcher said nothing, but his actions had already given his answer. "Since you can't choose, I'll choose for you." Looking at the mortal standing in front of him, the red glow in Homelander's eyes flickered. "Wow," Homelander clapped, staring at Butcher like he had found some priceless treasure. "Looks like this great husband has made the choice for you. William Butcher, I gotta say, you just keep earning my respect. For my kid's mother, you're really willing to hand over your life. That's touching, really." Homelander stepped up to Butcher until their noses were almost touching. In a voice only the two of them could hear, he murmured. "But killing you that easily would be way too kind. And way too boring. ... No, don't kill him, don't kill my husband." Behind him, whether Becca wanted it both ways or was driven by guilt, she scrambled forward on her hands and knees, trying to grab Homelander's cape. Homelander quickly stepped back, not letting Becca's hand touch it. Only he, his father, and his son were allowed to touch his cape. "I'm begging you, just let him go, and I'll do anything for you. Anything." Hearing that, Homelander raised an eyebrow, a wicked curve tugging at his mouth. Anything. Of course Homelander wasn't thinking about some sleazy Japanese plot. Right now, his head was full of family, not that kind of thing. Then came a thunderous whoosh. A violent gust instantly whipped the grass clippings off the ground. Butcher's vision blurred, and a powerful blast of air shoved him back 2 steps. By the time he steadied himself again, Becca, who had been collapsed on the ground, had vanished into thin air along with Homelander. Right where they had been, only Butcher remained, standing there alone as if the whole world had abandoned him. "Becca!" Butcher roared like a madman, but no answer came. Thousands of meters above the ground, Homelander held Becca by the collar, leaving her dangling high in the open sky. If he let go, Becca would be smashed to pieces. But Becca did not beg. She only glared at him. "You said you'd do anything, right?" Homelander's voice cut clearly through the raging wind. "Good, I can be merciful and spare your husband. But in exchange, from now on, you only get to play one role. Ryan's perfect mother." Homelander leaned close to Becca's ear and continued. "I'll allow you to keep raising Ryan. But if you dare run away with him, or try to poison him against me, or if I hear even half a bad word about me in front of him." His hand tightened slightly around Becca's neck. "I'll carve the flesh off Butcher's body piece by piece, right in front of you. Understand?" Becca's face turned red from the lack of air. But she did not hesitate. She nodded desperately, tears whipping away into the wind. She agreed. For Butcher's life, she was going to sell off the rest of her own. Even without Butcher by her side, at least she still had Ryan. Only 3 minutes later. Bang! Homelander and Becca reappeared in front of Butcher. Becca's legs gave out, and she collapsed to the ground, gasping hard, not even daring to lift her head and meet Butcher's eyes. Tisk, tisk, tisk. Damn, that was moving. Homelander straightened his cuffs, walked up to Butcher, and looked at him with unbearable pity. What a shame, William. You crossed mountains and oceans, came all this way burning with love to find your beloved wife. And what happened? Your Becca betrayed you and gave you up without a second thought, all to protect my son with her. Homelander did not waste another word. He grabbed Butcher by the collar again. With a whoosh, the two of them shot straight into the sky and vanished into the horizon. High in the air, the brutal pressure felt like it was about to crush Butcher's organs. Homelander kept flying at a speed that would not kill Butcher, but would absolutely torture him. He carried him across the ocean, across continents, and finally dove sharply, hurling Butcher away like garbage and slamming him hard into a barren wasteland in the middle of nowhere. Cough, cough. Butcher spat out a mouthful of blood, feeling as if every bone in his body was about to snap. This was an uninhabited area in some remote, war-torn African country. Homelander slowly descended in front of Butcher, hovering in midair without even a speck of dust touching the soles of his boots. Nice place, right? Perfect for you to sit here and think about your life. Oh, right, I forgot to tell you about the deal I just made with your wife. She swore she'd be a good mother to my son forever, and that she'd never see you again, all in exchange for your miserable little life. Listen to that, so noble. Homelander smiled. Butcher, you're pathetic. 8 years of revenge, 8 years of searching, and in the end, all you proved was one thing. In your wife's heart, my son matters 10,000 times more than you, her husband. Your whole life is one big fucking joke. Butcher was furious, but there was nothing he could do, because Homelander was telling the truth. Becca had chosen Ryan, she had not chosen him. That look, God, I love it. Homelander smiled faintly and said with genuine sincerity. Still, William, I really do hope you make it out of this desert alive. Keep coming after me to win back that wife who betrayed you. Otherwise, if you just die that easily, it'll be way too boring. With a father, a son, and a worthy opponent, Homelander felt like life was getting pretty damn good. A moment later, he shot into the sky, turning into a red and blue streak as he disappeared into the horizon. Only Butcher was left behind, sitting there alone, thinking about his life. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away, inside Vought's secret community, Becca had already returned to Ryan's room. She held Ryan tightly in her arms and bit hard into her lip, swallowing down all her grief, fear, and guilt toward her husband. She knew she had to steady herself. Because from this day on, she was no longer William Butcher's wife. She was simply a mother, one who had to keep the man she loved from being hurt again, and live for her own son. Chapter 83. Journey to Syria, Part 1. Syria. A dry, war-scarred land ravaged over and over by gunfire and smoke. Yellow sand whipped through the air on the howling wind, scraping over shattered walls and ruins like sandpaper. The smell of gunpowder hung thick in the air, yet in this death zone, where even local militants had to move with extreme caution, a man and a woman were strolling across the desert as casually as if they were out for a walk in the park. The man was tall and imposing, dressed in a dark green supersuit with a distinctly vintage look. Shield in hand, he walked at an easy pace without so much as glancing at the sniper nests hidden in the shadows around them. It was Benjamin, Vought's current supreme ruler, Soldier Boy. Walking half a step behind him was Starlight, Annie, wearing her signature platinum white supersuit. Her old supersuit, of course. Even in the choked winds of Syria, Starlight's beautiful face and striking figure still stood out sharply. Only now, she was not wearing the carefully practiced smile she usually put on for the cameras. Instead, she followed Benjamin step for step, her eyes carrying a trace of worship and obedience. Some time had passed since Vought International captured the superpowered Asian girl Kimiko and her brother Kenji. Benjamin knew nothing about what had happened in the secret community between Homelander, Butcher, and Becca. Mostly because Homelander had not cared enough about it to mention it to him. Today, Benjamin had brought Starlight all the way from bustling New York to Syria, not to soak up some exotic scenery or play tourist, but to deal with a problem. A supervillain named Nakib. More precisely, A terrorist who could blow himself up at any moment like a human nuke, then recover without a scratch. That power was a little like his own. In the original storyline, this self-detonating supervillain had been handled by Black Noir, Vought International's most ruthless killing machine. Unfortunately, Black Noir had already had his heart ripped out by Homelander himself. Without Black Noir, that tireless cleaner who did all the dirty work without complaint, Nakib had been left sitting there like a bomb waiting to go off. Of course, part of it was also because Benjamin had been bored out of his damn mind lately inside Vought Tower. Aside from his usual nighttime visits to Stormfront's apartment or RV to coach that crazy woman on her combat skills, or enjoying Starlight Annie's worship and service in his office, Benjamin would occasionally visit Annika's apartment late at night too. What surprised Benjamin was that Annika, who loved almond-filled chocolates, had never even had a boyfriend. This was America, after all, and a very open-minded America at that. Not to mention this was the world of the boys. The only downside was that Annika was just an ordinary person, with no superhuman physical ability. Which meant that whenever Benjamin went to her apartment or the vice president's office at night, he had to hold back a lot. Since he had nothing better to do anyway, Benjamin decided to get out for a change of scenery, bring Starlight along for some fresh air, and personally kill the self-destructing bastard Black Noir should have dealt with. Annie, Benjamin asked, how's it going with that Japanese girl, Kimiko? Starlight froze for a second, then quickly took 2 steps to catch up. Her expression turned hesitant, as if she was choosing her words carefully. Kimiko still seems unsure. Starlight smoothed back her blonde hair, mussed by the wind, and reported seriously, at first, she was very resistant. I followed your instructions and spoke with her privately a few times. I also promised her that you're different from the old Vought executives. Her attitude has softened a lot now, and she seems to be considering coming over to our side. At that point, Starlight paused. She lifted her head, her clear eyes sneaking a glance at Benjamin's broad back, and her voice lowered without her realizing it. But, Kimiko wrote something down for me. She said the reason so many supervillains injected with Compound V suddenly started popping up around the world wasn't actually President Edgar or Madeline's fault. Then Starlight's voice grew even weaker. It was Homelander. Back at the beginning, in order to help the company secure a military contract with the Department of Defense, Homelander secretly had people deliver the compound to those terrorists. The more Starlight spoke, the guiltier she sounded. After all, Homelander was Benjamin's son. So, Starlight forced herself to finish. Kimiko doesn't trust Homelander, and she doesn't really trust Vought either. If possible, she'd rather have you remove her and Kenji's superpowers, but she's even more afraid that you're lying to them. To Starlight's surprise, after hearing all that, Benjamin did not get angry. Instead, he simply nodded like it did not matter. Not bad, that was indeed my brainless, spineless son's handiwork. Benjamin's tone was blunt. Seeing Starlight's adorable, stunned look, her red lips slightly parted in shock, he could not help giving a soft laugh. He was not surprised that the boys and Kimiko knew about it. No need to look so shocked, Annie. Benjamin shrugged. Then he pulled a sterling silver flask from his pocket, tilted his head back, and took a swig of hard liquor. The burning liquid slid down his throat, cutting through the dryness of the wind and sand. If I hadn't woken up from that goddamn Russian cryogenic pod and come back to Vought to take charge, that attention-starved son of mine would absolutely have done shit 100 times dumber than this in the future, all for vanity and ratings. Benjamin said, but that doesn't mean Homelander can't change, does it? Hearing Benjamin speak so openly without dodging a thing only made Starlight admire him more. That was Soldier Boy's charm. He was not fake, and he did not hide from anything. Starlight nodded hard, light shining in her eyes. I believe in you, sir. Under your leadership, you, Homelander, and all of the 7 will definitely become real superheroes. Starlight continued, as for Kimiko, I'll go back and keep trying to persuade her patiently. But, sir, I'm a little worried. If we just let her and her brother out so easily, what should we do if she agrees on the surface, then secretly switches sides again and runs back to the boys? Starlight was genuinely worried about that. Benjamin found it funny. Annie, do you think I need to kiss some stray dog's ass and beg her to stay by my side? If she wants to join us, great. If she runs, we catch her again. That's simple. In truth, Benjamin was not worried about Kimiko joining the boys. In the original storyline, The reason Kimiko fully joined the boys was, at the end of the day, because her brother Kenji, the only family she had left, had his neck snapped by that crazy bitch Stormfront. But now, Stormfront had long since been trained into complete obedience. Without Benjamin's permission, there was no way she would execute Kenji on her own. I understand, sir. Good. Benjamin patted her head with satisfaction. Along the way, Benjamin had basically spent his relaxing hours at night with Starlight. If it were not broad daylight, and if there were not possible danger nearby, just from Benjamin patting her head, Starlight really wanted to kneel down. Chapter 84, Journey to Syria, Part 2. Before long, nearly half an hour had passed. At the edge of their vision, an armed stronghold came into view, built from abandoned concrete structures, barbed wire, and piles of sandbags. Several pickup trucks mounted with heavy machine guns were parked at the entrance. A dozen heavily armed terrorists with vicious eyes patrolled back and forth with AKs in hand. Some of them were also carrying rocket launchers. This was the most dangerous restricted zone in the entire desert. The camp of Nakib, a supervillain with the ability to self-detonate. From the camp ahead came the faint sound of terrorists barking orders in Arabic. "We're finally here," Soldier Boy said slowly. "Stormfront was right, sir. You really are damn good at finding people. Based on our speed, I figured it'd take us at least another 3 or 4 days, but I didn't expect." Starlight was confused, but her voice was full of admiration. The current Starlight was different from the one she would become later. She couldn't fly yet, and her speed was about the same as an ordinary person's. As for Soldier Boy, although he had speed LV1, he had been walking slowly to accommodate her. Benjamin stopped. He turned to look at Annie, who was practically itching to charge in beside him, and said flatly, "Annie, stay right here and don't move. I'll handle that bunch of trash up ahead." Annie froze for a moment, then a flash of defiance crossed her beautiful eyes. "Sir, I know you're strong, but I'm still a superhero from the 7. Annie lifted her chest slightly, her platinum-colored supersuit gleaming in the sunlight. "My superpowers aren't weak either. I can fight right alongside you." "You sure?" Benjamin tilted his head slightly, his deep gaze fixed on Annie. "You want to lose your superpowers and turn into some delicate woman who can't even beat a regular strong guy? If that happens, you won't be able to protect the people you want to protect." Annie instinctively took half a step back. Looking at Benjamin's serious expression, which didn't look like a joke at all, she couldn't help swallowing hard. A faint smile tugged at the corner of Benjamin's mouth as he looked toward the distant camp. "In a minute, I'm gonna show that little self-detonating brat in there what a real fucking self-detonation looks like." With that, Benjamin ignored Starlight, who was still standing there in a daze. Carrying the impossibly heavy eagle shield in one hand, he strode forward at an unhurried pace toward the terrorists' camp. Left behind, Annie pouted her full red lips helplessly. As she watched that broad back, a strange feeling suddenly rose in her heart. She was a superhero of the 7, an idol to countless teenagers across America, yet following Soldier Boy around now, she felt like some useless little mascot. Aside from being fucked half to death by this domineering man in bed at night and serving as his bedwarmer, whenever danger actually showed up, there was no need for her to do anything. Benjamin alone could crush every problem like an ant. Fine, being protected by the person she liked did feel pretty damn good, but Starlight wanted to fight too. Still, that frustration lasted only a second before it was replaced by intense curiosity. What exactly was the method Benjamin had mentioned earlier, the one that could strip people of their superpowers? He said he was going to show that supervillain what a real self-detonation looked like. Could it be that, aside from his freakishly powerful body, he could also trigger some kind of self-detonation that destroyed superpowers? Thinking this, Annie obediently pushed all her other thoughts aside and found a relatively safe boulder to use as cover. She poked half her head out, cupped her hands around her mouth, and shouted at his back like the most fanatical little fangirl. "Mr. Soldier Boy, kick their ass." As Benjamin kept approaching, the terrorists on the sentry towers around the camp finally spotted him. In a hellhole like Syria, where people died every single day, these desperate bastards didn't bother with warnings or small talk. The moment they saw through their binoculars that a burly man in a vintage supersuit was swaggering toward them, they didn't hesitate at all. They immediately pulled the trigger. Rat-tat-tat-tat. Deafening gunfire tore through the silence of the desert. A Soviet-made DSHK heavy machine gun mounted in the bed of a pickup truck opened fire first. This terrifying weapon, with a caliber of 12.7 millimeters, was normally used against light armored vehicles and armed helicopters. Against an ordinary person, a single round was enough to cut them clean in half. A dense hail of bullets instantly swallowed the area around Benjamin. Clang, 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 clang. But what happened next nearly made the eyes of every terrorist who had opened fire pop out of their sockets. Those heavy machine gun rounds, powerful enough to tear through steel plate, struck Benjamin's dark green supersuit and even hit his chest and neck, yet all they produced was a crisp series of metallic clangs. The moment the warheads touched Benjamin's skin, the sheer force of the rebound flattened them into metal pancakes before they dropped uselessly onto the scorching sand. Benjamin didn't even blink, he simply walked forward against the heavy machine gun fire, keeping the same steady, unhurried pace. Fuck, what the hell is that thing? RPG. Blow him apart with an RPG. A terrorist who looked like a leader shouted in panic. Whoosh, two militants carrying rocket launchers immediately leaned out. Two RPG rockets, dragging long trails of flame behind them and screaming through the air, slammed toward Benjamin from the left and right. At the same time, on a high point 800 meters from the camp, a deeply hidden sniper also pulled the trigger of his Barrett heavy sniper rifle. Bang! An armor-piercing round shot toward Benjamin's forehead at supersonic speed. RPGs. A heavy sniper rifle. Of course, terrifying as these weapons were, they probably couldn't even hurt Annie, let alone Soldier Boy. Facing the rockets already right in front of him, Benjamin didn't even bother raising his shield. Boom, boom. The two RPGs exploded directly against Benjamin's chest. Blinding fire and thick black smoke swallowed him in an instant, while the terrifying shockwave sent sand and dirt flying across more than 10 meters around him. At the same time, the Barrett armor-piercing round struck Benjamin squarely in the forehead amid the flames. Hit! The sniper shouted in wild excitement from behind his scope. But when a gust of wind blew the smoke away, everyone's breath caught. Benjamin was still standing in the same spot, completely unharmed, without the slightest sign that the barrage had done anything to him. Chapter 85. Journey to Syria, Part 3. My turn, you little shits. Benjamin rolled his neck. The next second, he charged in. Boom. Benjamin closed in on the wall and smashed straight through it, crashing into the crowd. He threw a simple, no-frills straight punch. Bang. A militant holding an AK didn't even have time to scream before his entire head burst into a mist of blood. Right after that, Benjamin casually swung the shield in his hand. Clang. The solid shield sliced the pickup truck mounted with the heavy machine gun, along with the terrorist on it, clean in half. In less than half a minute, Benjamin moved through the camp like he was taking a casual stroll. He did not use any flashy moves. One punch, or one shield strike. Wherever he passed, the ground was left covered in severed limbs and twisted, mangled guns. Only then did these militants, brainwashed by religious fanaticism, finally break completely. It's a soup. Shit. Vought International sent a soup. Run. He can't be killed. Screams and terrified cries ripped through the camp. The surviving militants threw away their gear and scattered in every direction like lunatics. The massive commotion finally alerted the owner of the camp. The door of the sturdiest building in the center of the camp was kicked open. A barrette-vested man stepped out, a distinctive emblem marked on his body. Nakib, the supervillain who had once infiltrated a CIA safe house and leveled an entire building with one self-detonation. As soon as Nakib stepped outside, his eyes landed on the towering man standing in a pool of blood, shield in hand. The instant he recognized him, Nakib sucked in a sharp breath, his scalp going numb. Soldier Boy. As someone with superpowers, Nakib naturally knew Soldier Boy. He recognized this legendary figure, the symbol of America's strongest military force, at a glance. Fear spread through Nakib's heart. Why the hell had they sent Soldier Boy to kill him? But soon, that fear was swallowed by a sick kind of madness. After all, he was an extremely powerful soup too. Even if his self-detonation could not kill Soldier Boy, it should at least hurt him. And if it could hurt him, maybe there was a way to take Soldier Boy down. Nakib lowered his head and glanced at the energy surging wildly inside him, power that could destroy everything at any moment. Hey, ha 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 ha. Nakib suddenly burst into crazed laughter. He stared at Benjamin. Soldier Boy, today I'll use you, America's top superhero, to test just how strong I've become. Nakib secretly imagined it. If he could seriously wound Soldier Boy today, his name would echo across the entire global underground dark web. He would become a new god. What he did not know was that forget taking a blast head-on, even setting off a small nuclear bomb inside Soldier Boy's body would not kill him. It might not even hurt him. After all, the Soviets had spent decades researching how to kill Soldier Boy. All charged up yet, little firecracker. Benjamin casually planted his shield into the sand at his feet, clapped his hands, and looked at Nakib as the glow around him grew brighter and brighter. Go on, little firecracker. Blow yourself up as hard as you want. Just don't bore me. ... Burn in the truth. With Nakib's hysterical, fanatical roar, the orange-yellow light surging like magma in his chest reached its breaking point. Boom! A terrifying shockwave erupted from Nakib and swept outward in a raging ring. Violent flames swallowed everything within a dozen meters in an instant. Solid concrete walls and the wreckage of abandoned armored vehicles were vaporized like paper. The intense heat even melted the yellow sand on the ground into dark red, glass-like crystals. Nearly half the camp was turned into a sea of fire and ruins by that devastating blast. And Benjamin, standing at the absolute center of the explosion, did not move an inch. The raging flames swallowed him completely. A few seconds later, the aftershocks gradually faded. Nakib gasped hard, staring at the center of the rolling smoke. Ha ha ha, even if you're the legendary Soldier Boy. His crazed laughter stopped dead. A scorching breeze blew away the smoke. That tall, imposing man was still standing there in silence. Completely unharmed. This is impossible. Nakib's legs suddenly went weak. His full-power attack, strong enough to flatten a building, had not done a damn thing. Big noise, I'll give you that. Too bad the temperature's too low. The Soviets used lava about that hot to give me baths. Benjamin rolled his neck slightly. Now it's my turn, little firecracker. Soon, a terrifying white light flared at the center of Benjamin's chest. This was not ordinary firelight. It was nuclear radiation. Nakib's pupils shrank. He opened his mouth to scream for mercy, but it was already too late. Boom! Terrifying nuclear energy erupted from Benjamin's chest. In that instant, Nakib did not even have time to scream. The moment his body touched the nuclear blast, it completely disintegrated. His body, and even the compound V genes inside him, were forcibly erased. Then the shockwave from the nuclear blast swallowed the entire terrorist camp with unstoppable force and expanded outward at a horrifying speed. In the distance, Starlight Annie, who had thought she was safely standing hundreds of meters away, felt an overwhelming threat in that instant. Oh my God! Annie's face went pale as she watched the once flat stretch of desert ahead get swallowed by the nuclear blast. To avoid getting caught in it, Annie stopped caring about how she looked and scrambled backward on all fours for over 100 meters, hiding behind a sand dune. A long while passed. Only then did the apocalyptic commotion finally settle. Still shaken, Annie peeked half her head out from behind the dune. When she saw what lay ahead, her whole body froze. Her beautiful eyes went wide. The heavily guarded militant camp, along with everything around it, had vanished into thin air. In its place was a massive crater. In the middle of the hellishly hot ruins, Benjamin held his shield in one hand and walked up the sloping edge of the enormous crater step by step. Even after standing at the center of a nuclear blast, his supersuit was still spotless. What are you standing there for? Let's go, Annie. Benjamin walked up to Annie, glanced at Starlight, who was still trembling, and called out casually. Oh, right, yes, sir. Annie snapped back to herself, swallowed hard, and hurried after Benjamin at a jog. She looked back at the terrifying crater behind them. Then she looked at Benjamin's broad, mountain-like back. Sir. Annie hesitated for a moment, but she could not suppress her curiosity and asked carefully, didn't you say you were going to show me your ability to strip people of their superpowers? What? Benjamin stopped, turned around, and looked at Annie like she was an idiot. Did I not just demonstrate it perfectly? Huh? Annie was stunned. But, Annie pointed at the massive crater in shock. Didn't he just get blown to dust? Come on, little Annie. Use your head, Benjamin explained. The nuclear blast I release contains special radiation that can completely destroy Compound V. So yes, I did strip that kid of his superpowers. It's just that his little firecracker body was way too fragile. He couldn't survive the radiation impact. How the hell is that my fault? Put simply, a soup who can withstand the nuclear blast loses their superpowers. A soup who can't withstand it disappears from this world completely, superpowers and all. That's insane. Starlight was dumbfounded. In other words, If Homelander or Maeve took that nuclear blast, maybe they could survive it, but afterward, they would lose their superpowers outright. It was powerful. It was practically broken. That said, I can control the size of the nuclear blast too, Benjamin continued. If you want to lose your superpowers, I can adjust the frequency a little so I don't hurt you. No, sir, I think I'm good the way I am. I have superpowers, I can be a superhero, and I can help people who need it. Starlight quickly shook her head. Chapter 86. Homelander is upset again. After dealing with that overconfident Nakib, Benjamin was in no hurry to take Starlight back across the ocean to New York. Since they had finally come all this way, of course they were going to enjoy themselves a little. Over the next half-month, Benjamin took Annie on an extremely pleasant vacation through a country where war and desert sands were woven together. During the day, they rode in a private bulletproof SUV specially approved by Vought International, hunting down reckless warlord militias out in the no man's land. At night, inside an incredibly luxurious tent, he enjoyed Starlight's increasingly skilled and obedient service. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away, on the top floor of Vought Tower in New York, Benjamin would never have imagined that Homelander was upset again. Crack. Inside Vought Tower's luxurious lounge, an ugly look flickered through Homelander's eyes. The wine glass in his hand shattered in an instant. Expensive red wine mixed with shards of glass dripped from his pure white glove onto the priceless carpet. Homelander's face was so dark it looked ready to drip water. He stared hard at the huge LCD screen mounted on the wall. On the screen, that day's Fox News headline was playing. In the footage, Stormfront stood atop a pile of rubble in a black supersuit, her short hair framing her face as she held a half-dead supervillain in one hand and flashed a confident, cocky smile at the countless cameras and microphones. Yes, protecting the American people is my duty. Unlike certain people who only know how to float around in the sky and pose. I prefer to keep my feet on the ground and wipe out trash like this. As he listened to Stormfront's inflammatory speech on TV, as he heard the crowd erupt into thunderous cheers, Homelander felt as though a massive stone had lodged itself in his chest, making even his breathing grow heavy. Ever since Benjamin and Starlight left for their trip to Syria, Stormfront, who had once done nothing but coast and slack off in the Seven, suddenly seemed to have lost her damn mind. Out of nowhere, she started throwing herself into the spotlight like she was hopped up on adrenaline. That damn Stormfront had shown terrifying energy, whether actively responding to rescue missions around the country or attending every kind of press conference and talk show interview. What Homelander found most unbearable was what happened just yesterday. A high-profile supervillain who had already been assigned for him to personally take down and use to boost his approval ratings had been snatched away by Stormfront first. Stormfront not only took down and killed that supervillain, she also stole every headline that should have belonged to him. And this was not the first or second time it had happened. Every time Homelander wanted to show off, that woman Stormfront was smart enough to cut in first and steal the spotlight. There were even memes about Homelander spreading online now, and that was what he hated most. Some asshole had photoshopped Homelander's head onto Stormfront's body in a picture of the Seven. Someone else had photoshopped Soldier Boy and Stormfront onto Homelander's back, the two of them standing on the flying Homelander as they soared through the sky hand in hand. Soldier Boy was one thing, but Stormfront, who the hell did she think she was? Who the hell did she think she was? The more Homelander thought about it, the angrier he became. I'm the leader of the Seven. Soldier Boy and I are the greatest superheroes in the world. The veins in Homelander's neck bulged one by one. In the past, if anyone in the Seven had dared to steal his thunder like this, Homelander would have found some night without surveillance cameras and used heat vision to slice their head off bit by bit. Then he would squeeze out a few tears in front of the cameras and announce that they had tragically died in the line of duty. But with Stormfront, he did not dare. Homelander clenched his teeth, took several deep breaths, and forced the red glow in his eyes back down. Because he knew exactly what kind of relationship Stormfront had with his father. Out of respect for his father, Homelander could only swallow the anger like a wronged child who did not dare throw a tantrum. He was afraid that if he touched Stormfront, Benjamin would be unhappy. Homelander let out a long breath, grabbed a tissue to wipe his hand, put on the fake, perfect smile he usually wore in public, pushed open the lounge door, and headed toward the Seven circular conference room. He needed to patrol his territory and remind people he existed. This was one of Homelander's favorite things to do. Especially when Benjamin was not around. Then Homelander was the goddamn sky over Vought. However, just as he passed the quiet hallway beside the conference room, his super hearing, millions of times sharper than an ordinary person's, suddenly caught a familiar voice. It was Maeve. At that moment, Maeve was standing in a blind spot at the end of the corridor with her back to him, holding a private cell phone that was not connected to Vought International's surveillance system as she spoke on a call. As her former lover, Homelander had an extremely sick possessiveness toward Maeve. Even though they had broken up long ago. But in Homelander's mind, Maeve had once been his woman, which meant she would always be his private property. Homelander could choose not to have her, but Maeve was not allowed to betray him. Homelander stopped walking and stood at the corner like a ghost, listening closely. I know, I'm sorry, Elena, I really can't get away right now. Trust me, okay, once I'm done with what I'm handling. Maeve's voice was very low, but the tenderness in her tone caught Homelander's attention. The smile on Homelander's face stiffened. Elena. That was a woman's name. In theory, it was perfectly normal for two women to talk on the phone like close friends. But combined with Maeve's heartbeat and that tone in her voice, Homelander's almost pathological intuition instantly told him something was off. The relationship between those two women was definitely not simple. They were sure as hell not just friends. A few minutes later, Maeve hung up, took a deep breath, adjusted the expression on her face, and turned to walk down the hallway. The moment she rounded the corner, her pupils widened. Homelander stood there with his hands behind his back, wearing that signature smile as he stared at her. Homelander. Maeve forced herself to stay calm. Hey, Maeve. Homelander took one slow step forward, his tall body instantly casting Maeve in shadow. He tilted his head slightly and said gently, "Who were you talking to just now? Sounded like you were having fun." Maeve remained as cold as usual. No one. Just a regular friend. Why? A regular friend. Homelander's smile stayed in place, but he no longer believed Maeve. He could hear it. He could hear it clearly. When Maeve said, "regular friend," the heart inside her chest beat faster than usual. She was lying. Maeve had someone, maybe an ex-girlfriend he had never known about, or maybe a current girlfriend. Maeve had been lying to him all along. She would rather love some ordinary woman with no superpowers than open her heart to him. She had even broken up with him. An indescribable feeling of betrayal and loneliness wrapped itself around Homelander's heart. First, that bitch Stormfront kept targeting him, intentionally or not, stealing his spotlight. Now, even Maeve, the person he had once considered closest to him, had been feeding him lies the whole time. What the hell was wrong with this world? Homelander felt like his brain was about to split open. It seemed like the only people in the entire world who truly belonged to him were his father, Benjamin, and Ryan. Other than his father and his son, had everyone else betrayed him? Homelander did not dare think about it. He was heartbroken. Maeve said, "Homelander, I just remembered there's an urgent meeting with PR that I need to attend." She lowered her head and squeezed past him. "I'm going." Watching Maeve's flustered figure hurry away, Homelander did not stop her. Maeve thought back to the slightly unstable look in Homelander's eyes just now, and a wave of helplessness rose inside her. Originally, when Soldier Boy Benjamin returned to Vought and forcefully brought everything under control, Homelander should have been properly disciplined. But now it seemed that was not necessarily true. Although Homelander had gotten much better recently, his true nature had not changed. Strip away the powerful cloak of his superpowers. Homelander was still that moody, love-starved giant baby. Maeve could only hope Benjamin and Starlight came back soon. Chapter 87. Yay. A few more suffocating days passed. For Homelander, every minute of those days felt like being roasted alive over an open flame. He felt like he was going to explode from rage. Maeve's betrayal and deception were already lodged in his heart like a thorn. And that damn woman Stormfront was like a greedy vampire, sucking up the spotlight and fan cheers that should have belonged to him. Homelander could not take it anymore. He needed an outlet. He needed to blow off steam. So, radiating pure hostility, he stormed into Doppelganger's cabin. Doppelganger. Inside that dim little cabin, Homelander treated the soup who could transform into anyone like a living punching bag. He even forced Doppelganger to take Maeve's appearance. Then he drove his steel-hard fists into that face, punch after punch. Madeline, Edgar, Becca. As for Stormfront, Homelander did not do it. Mainly because Stormfront's relationship with Soldier Boy made him afraid to desecrate her image. Bang, bang, bang. The sound of bones breaking echoed through the cabin. Doppelganger was beaten until blood sprayed everywhere, begging for mercy again and again. In the end, he could not even maintain his transformation anymore and reverted to his original, hideous form, twitching in a pool of blood like a dead dog. If Homelander had not clung to the last shred of sanity at the final moment, Doppelganger's head would have been crushed under his foot like a watermelon. Even after beating Doppelganger, the fire in Homelander's chest barely died down at all. After that, he tried flying tens of thousands of meters into the sky and unloading his heat vision into the clouds. He tried causing avalanches in remote snow-covered mountains. He tried every extreme way he could think of to relieve the pressure. But that deep anxiety and insecurity still followed him like a shadow. Of course, Homelander was restraining himself. He was venting, yes, but he had not hurt a single person. Doppelganger. So, Homelander had thought about calling Benjamin. God, he wanted his father to act like a real elder, to pat him on the head. To tell him, good job, son. You're the best. Then he could tell him everything that had happened lately. But when Homelander's finger hovered over the call button, he jerked it back like he had been shocked. No, absolutely not. In Soldier Boy's eyes, only weaklings and pussies ran crying to their parents the second they hit a little setback. If he could not even handle one spotlight-stealing Stormfront, his father would be completely disappointed in him. Besides, the worst part was that Stormfront had not actually done anything wrong. She had just stolen his spotlight. I don't need help, I can handle this myself. Homelander gritted his teeth, a sick glint flashing in his eyes. He decided he would personally take back everything that belonged to him. A few hours later, outside the filming base for The Seven, Homelander's face was dark as he went straight for Stormfront's luxury RV without knocking, without a single word of greeting, and slammed the door open like a violent gust of wind. Stormfront was lounging comfortably on the sofa, sipping juice and scrolling through her steadily climbing Twitter follower count. When she saw Homelander storm in, furious and out of control, she did not get up. Instead, she raised an eyebrow, the corner of her mouth curling into a mocking smirk, like she was watching a show. Who the fuck do you think you are? Homelander stepped inside and roared, you think I'm blind? You think I can't see through your dirty, low-rent bullshit? You keep stealing my rescue missions everywhere, running your mouth in front of the media. You trying to take my team from me? Trying to push me out of the Seven? The more Homelander spoke, the more worked up he became. I know exactly what you're doing. You want to crawl into my father's bed. You want to look better than me in front of him. You want to take everything from me. I'm telling you right now, that is never fucking happening. Faced with Homelander's hysterical rant, Stormfront did not even blink. She simply shifted into a more comfortable position on the sofa. I'm the fucking captain of the Seven. Not you. Homelander kept going. I still have massive approval ratings. Ages 3 to 15, 18 to 49, even 25 to 53, all of them love me. And everyone else in the Seven, and Soldier Boy, they all love me. When he shouted that last line, they all love me, his voice even cracked, carrying a pitiful tremor. Stormfront looked at the man in front of her, this man with godlike power and the fragile heart of a 3-year-old giant baby, with open contempt, like she was staring at an idiot. Wow, well, congratulations. Stormfront's voice dripped with sarcasm. I mean, needing everyone to love you like they're soothing a baby every second of the day is pretty pathetic, but... At this point, Stormfront deliberately drew out her words and made an extremely provocative gesture at Homelander. Yay. Chapter 88. Beat them both. That mocking, yay, was enough to push Homelander over the edge. He snapped, and his eyes turned scarlet in an instant. Seeing Homelander huffing with rage, Stormfront was about to try to calm him down. But just then, boom, a shield gleaming with cold metal light smashed through the RV's heavy bulletproof door from outside like a cannonball fired from a barrel. The violent impact sent broken metal and splintered wood flying through the cabin. The shield tore through the air before finally slamming into the metal wall between Homelander and Stormfront with a heavy thud. Stormfront's entire RV shook violently. Inside the cabin, everything went dead silent. Stormfront froze. Homelander, whose eyes had just been glowing with terrifying red light, took several steps back the moment he recognized that shield. A steady, powerful set of footsteps came from beyond the shattered door. Looks like while I was away for half a month, the members of the Seven have been getting along just fine. A low voice rang out. Then Benjamin slowly stepped into the cabin, dressed in a dark green supersuit, his whole body carrying the hard, blood and gunpowder reek of someone who had just returned from the Syrian battlefield. Behind him, Starlight followed quietly like an obedient personal attendant. Benjamin glanced over the wrecked RV. Inside, the silence was deathly. The Golden Eagle shield embedded in the metal wall was still faintly trembling, letting out a chilling hum. Benjamin walked forward with steady steps and slowly came to a stop between the two of them. He ignored Homelander, who was looking at him with an almost pleading, wounded expression. Instead, he slowly turned his head and fixed his deep eyes on Stormfront. Stormfront swallowed and was just about to force out one of her usual harmless smiles to explain herself. But in the next moment, Benjamin's thick right arm swung up hard, and a piercing sonic boom exploded through the air. Bam! A heavy impact rang out. Benjamin's fist slammed squarely into Stormfront's left cheek. PFF'd. Stormfront was sent flying as if she had been hit head-on by a heavy truck at full speed, spraying a mouthful of blood into the air. Her body shot backward, smashed through the RV's solid wood interior with a boom, shattered the liquor cabinet behind her, and finally lodged deep in a pile of broken glass and wreckage. Don't think just because I'm not in New York, I don't know what kind of crap you've been pulling behind my back. Benjamin slowly drew back his fist and looked down at Stormfront as she writhed in pain in the wreckage. Without mercy, he tore away her mask, his voice ice-cold. Clara, just moments ago, Ashley, the current CEO of Vought International, had already reported everything that had happened inside the company to him in exhaustive detail. Ashley had not only noticed Homelander's recent extreme instability and violent mood swings, but had also told Benjamin all about Stormfront's actions, the ones that looked on the surface like simple, power struggles. After all, Stormfront had never been this eager before. There had to be a reason. As a transmigrator with an omniscient perspective, and with Ashley's report on top of that, how could Benjamin possibly fail to guess Stormfront's real goal? This female Nazi, who had lived for nearly a century, had never once given up on her little fantasy of soups ruling the world. When Benjamin was at the company, Stormfront behaved like an obedient kitten. Every day, aside from warming his bed, she played harmless in front of the cameras. But the second Benjamin left for Syria, she started stirring shit up. On the surface, she was stealing the spotlight. In reality, she was deliberately provoking Homelander. She was trying to slip in when Homelander was at his weakest and angriest. Then she would use that extremist ideology of hers to corrupt him. Listen, Clara, this is the last time I'm warning you. Benjamin grabbed Stormfront by her messy hair and said, those stinking Nazi ideas rattling around in your head. I will never agree with them. And my son, no matter how stupid or brainless he is, would never agree with them either. Even in the original timeline, Homelander had sneered at Stormfront's racist ideology about ruling the world. Later, when Stormfront was lying in bed and realized Homelander would not help her unite the world under soups, she chose to kill herself. If I catch you pulling this kind of crap behind my back again, Benjamin said, pressing his thumb hard against Stormfront's carotid artery, his voice freezing cold, I'm not just kicking you out of the 7. You fucking understand me. Feeling the terrifying pressure at her neck, Stormfront's badly swollen face twisted into an extremely complicated expression. I was wrong, Ben. Stormfront weakly held her face, her voice trembling. That punch was the hardest she had taken in decades. She felt as if her skull was about to crack open, and her brain was still buzzing. Benjamin really did seem like he had wanted to kill her. She kept feeling that Benjamin had changed. Decades ago, before Vought International sold him out to the Soviets, Soldier Boy had been domineering and crude, but he definitely had not been this bad-tempered. Back then, even when she talked about those Nazi theories, Benjamin would at most snap at her impatiently or refuse to agree. He never would have reacted like this. And yet that change brought Stormfront a twisted sense of submission through the pain. So what if he had a temper? He was the strongest, most perfect man in the world. In Stormfront's extreme, strength-worshipping mind, only violence like Benjamin's, violence that could absolutely crush everything, was worthy of the word, leader. I swear, Ben, I'll never do it again. Stormfront lowered her head like a beaten bitch and meekly swallowed down all her ambition. Meanwhile, Homelander stood not far away, watching it all. The anger on his face vanished. The corners of his mouth lifted higher and higher until he could no longer hold back a smug smile. He was thrilled. He was so happy he felt like he could fly. See that? Father hit her. Father hurt that arrogant Stormfront, the one who kept stealing his spotlight, for his sake. In Father's eyes, he was more important than Stormfront. Homelander felt utterly satisfied. Even the suffocating frustration from Maeve's betrayal vanished in that instant. Fantastic. Homelander took a deep breath and straightened his messy cape. He put away all his hostility and put on the expression of a good son who had just been wronged and finally found someone to back him up. He could not wait to take 2 steps forward, looking at Benjamin as he finished dealing with Stormfront and turned around. I knew you'd do it for me. But before he could finish speaking, whoosh, Benjamin had just turned around, and he did not waste a single word. The same right fist that had just sent Stormfront flying came swinging straight at Homelander. The smile on Homelander's face froze. Bam! In that instant, Homelander did not even have time to understand what was happening. He only felt as if his left cheek had been hit dead on by an armor-piercing missile. No, that was too light. Homelander slammed hard into the RV's tough alloy floor. Both Stormfront and Homelander had been beaten by Benjamin. Starlight stood outside the door, so frightened that she covered her mouth and sucked in a sharp breath. Inside the cabin, everything fell into dead silence again. Only Stormfront's labored breathing could be heard from the wreckage. The punch had been powerful, but Homelander clearly had not been seriously hurt. Even so, he did not get up right away. He stared wide-eyed with those deep blue eyes, his gaze filled with confusion and utter disbelief. What the hell was going on? Why would Soldier Boy hit me? What did I do wrong? Homelander clutched his badly swollen left cheek, looking like a child who had been smacked out of nowhere and left stunned. He slowly stood up, and the wounded look returned to his eyes as he gazed at Soldier Boy. Chapter 89. Homelander gets scolded again. You've really disappointed me, John. Benjamin looked at Homelander, his voice thick with the kind of frustration that came from expecting better. But that hurt Homelander even more than the punch. For Homelander, who craved his father's love more than anything, the word, disappointed, was deadlier than 10,000 armor-piercing rounds to the heart. Homelander clutched his swollen cheek and had no idea what to say. You think I hit you because you were throwing a tantrum in here? Benjamin pointed at Stormfront and let out a cold laugh. Use that brain of yours, the one stuffed full of ratings data. You really think she did all this today just to steal your spotlight? Just to piss you off? Homelander froze. He was not stupid. As a soup, his reason quickly began to return. When he connected it with what his father had just said while dealing with Stormfront, words like corrupt, brainwash, and Nazi ideology, Homelander's pupils shrank. He seemed to understand the purpose behind Stormfront's insane behavior these past few days. No, let me explain. Homelander panicked and hurriedly shouted, I swear. She didn't get to me. How the hell could I agree with that kind of thinking? That shit is too extreme, too insane. Homelander desperately tried to prove his innocence. I'm Justice. I'm a superhero. I just thought she was trying to take my spot as captain of the Seven. I was just pissed off. You know me. Watching Homelander babble incoherently, Benjamin frowned. Fine, let's leave that bitch Stormfront out of it. Benjamin advanced on Homelander step by step, his overwhelming presence forcing Homelander to retreat again and again. Tell me why. Why the hell did you fall apart just because she stole your spotlight a few times? Because she grabbed a few headlines from you. Look at yourself just now. Hysterical, useless fucking rage. Benjamin's deep eyes seemed to pierce straight through Homelander's soul. You have the strongest power on this planet. You're the most powerful soup alive. But inside, you're fragile as a giant baby. A freak with a black hole in his head that nothing can ever fill. Giant baby, freak. If those words had come from anyone else, Homelander would have burned them to ash with heat vision without a second thought. But coming from his father, Homelander had no way to argue back. Stormfront was right about one thing just now. You're pathetic, John. Benjamin showed no mercy. You're sick with wanting the whole world to love you. You only feel like you exist when you're staring at those approval ratings. Every word of Benjamin's scolding hit Homelander's heart like a sledgehammer. Homelander's eyes reddened visibly. Benjamin noticed that Homelander's expression had turned deeply wounded, as if he might burst into tears at any second. He quickly stopped. The air froze for several seconds. Then he shook his head, and his tone softened noticeably. All right, I was a little too harsh just now. At the end of the day, John, this isn't entirely on you. Benjamin looked into Homelander's eyes and said slowly, it's on Vought International, for raising you like a lab rat. It's on that cold, heartless laboratory. He paused, and a trace of self-blame entered his voice. And more than anything, it's on me. During your childhood, when you needed a father's guidance and the warmth of a family the most, I wasn't there for you. I was absent from your life, and that's how those bastards twisted you into what you are now. Those words settled over him like a gentle rain. To Homelander, it was the most perfect redemption in the world. Because Benjamin had not abandoned him. He was even blaming himself for Homelander's psychological flaws. Homelander let out a long breath of relief. The heavy stone in his heart finally dropped. Father loved him. Meanwhile, Starlight, who had been hiding beside the shattered RV door and watching the entire thing, was already overwhelmed. Only now did she understand the truth. Homelander, the perfect idol in the hearts of the American people, was actually a giant baby starved for love. Stormfront, the new female hero whose popularity had been exploding online, was secretly a racist who wanted to pull Homelander in and rule all humanity. Add in A-Train, who had nearly run a pedestrian over, and the Deep, who had nearly assaulted her. Oh my God, Annie could not help sighing inwardly. It seemed like Queen Maeve, who kept a cold face all day and acted like she did not care about anything, was the only Soup who could barely count as normal. Annie took a deep breath. Then she looked at Benjamin again. Thank God Benjamin, the one managing the Seven, was normal too. With him in charge, these superheroes probably would not cause any serious trouble, right? Thinking of that, Annie felt an unprecedented wave of relief and security. Thank God he was here. Just as Annie's thoughts were running wild, inside the cabin, Benjamin looked at the now calm Homelander and nodded. He raised his hand and, as usual, patted Homelander's broad shoulder. A superhero should fucking act like a superhero. Benjamin glanced at the sky outside the window, his tone as casual as an ordinary father who had just gotten off work. Come on, it's getting late, have dinner with me. I just got back to New York, and I heard a pretty good Tomahawk steakhouse opened up. Chapter 90. Love is Mutual. The wounded look on Homelander's face vanished the moment he heard his father invite him to dinner. He even straightened his cape impatiently and followed after Benjamin. Benjamin stepped out of the RV. As he passed Annie, his steps paused slightly. Benjamin said, "Wait for me at the apartment, Annie. I'll come find you tonight." Annie's pretty face flushed at the aggressively suggestive hint. "Yes, sir, I'll be waiting." Homelander glanced at Annie, clearly not thrilled. Benjamin and Homelander soon left the RV. After watching the father and son leave, Starlight turned around, looked at Stormfront in the wreckage of the RV, and let out a helpless sigh. "Well, guess my work's not done yet." Muttering to herself, Annie walked over and grabbed Stormfront by the arm, hauling her up like a dead dog. She needed to get this world domination wannabe Stormfront to Vought's secret hospital for emergency treatment, fast. The New York night breeze carried a faint chill fretted with the city's noise. Neon lights sliced the skyline into strange, dazzling fragments. The father and son had just finished tomahawk steaks at a high-end restaurant, and now they were walking side by side down a relatively quiet street. Because of the violent clash that had broken out in the RV earlier, the atmosphere between them still held a faint, awkward stiffness. Homelander trailed half a step behind Benjamin with his head lowered, like a kid who had screwed up and was terrified of pissing off his parent again. Benjamin walked ahead with an unlit cigar between his teeth, his brow slightly furrowed as his mind raced over a troublesome question. How was he supposed to completely root out Homelander's sick, love-starved personality? Benjamin knew Homelander's nature all too well. In the original storyline, Homelander's giant baby syndrome and extreme lack of love were practically terminal illnesses buried deep in his bones. Even as the story moved into seasons 4 and 5, he kept abandoning his own humanity. And yet, even at the very end, he still never fully succeeded. In the end, Homelander still had humanity. He still craved love. Just like Vought International had said, he could never break free from his humanity. Originally, toward the later part of Season 4, Homelander had seemed like he was about to sever his mortal emotions and fully awaken into darkness. And then what happened? That low-tier female Soup called Firecracker used a dose of motherly, glowing breast milk to force him right back down. Benjamin realized that Homelander's education had hit a bottleneck. It had been a long time since the system had given him a notification that Homelander's education had succeeded. That meant continuing the transaction, making Homelander change again and become better, was proving difficult. John. Benjamin suddenly stopped, turned his head, and fixed his deep gaze on Homelander's slightly uneasy face. "Dad, I'm here." Homelander straightened at once. Benjamin took the cigar from his mouth. His tone was no longer as cold as before. Instead, it carried the weary clarity of someone who had seen too much. "You need to understand something, John. The world has never been black and white. Some people will love you because you saved them, but there will always be people who envy you, fear you, or even hate you for no damn reason just because you're powerful. Otherwise, where the hell do you think internet trolls come from? I've been through all of it." Benjamin continued, "You can't build your self-worth on the poll numbers of a bunch of stupid civilians. You have to let go of that sick obsession with making the entire world love you unconditionally." Homelander froze where he stood and said nothing. Confusion flickered in his bright blue eyes. Let go of the obsession. He didn't need everyone's love. To him, that was as impossible to understand as telling a fish to leave the water and breathe air. Benjamin did not care whether Homelander understood right away. He turned around, his back to New York's glittering nightscape, and left him with 2 lessons. Remember this: love is mutual. If you want someone's real love, then you need to learn how to love others, and how to respect life. After saying that, Benjamin paid no further attention to Homelander, who had sunk into a storm of thought. He casually tossed the cigar into a trash can and strode into the darkness at the street corner. In his luxury apartment, a blonde, blue-eyed beauty named Starlight, dressed in a white and gold supersuit, was waiting for him under the warm covers so he could burn off his excess energy. Love is mutual. On the empty street, Homelander stood alone beneath the streetlight, repeating those words over and over. A breeze stirred the stars and stripes cape behind him. In the 30-plus years he had grown up inside Vought Labs, the scientists in white coats had taught him how to kill, how to use his superpowers, how to gain other people's love, how to fake a smile in front of the cameras, and how to maintain his approval ratings. But not a single person had ever told him that love was mutual. Homelander felt as if a slit had been torn open in his brain. Some emotion he had never experienced before was quietly sprouting inside that wound. He did not immediately fly back to Vought Tower. Instead, like an ordinary person, he walked aimlessly down the broken suburban road, step by step, thinking over what his father had said. The night grew deeper, and the suburban streets became utterly desolate. Just as Homelander was completely lost in his father's lesson. "Help, please, don't come any closer." A woman's shrill, desperate plea suddenly tore through the night sky and reached Homelander's sharp ears with perfect clarity. Before he met Benjamin, Homelander would not have so much as lifted an eyelid for some mortal's cry for help, as long as there were no cameras or media around. Homelander quickly headed toward the sound. About 2 blocks away, in a pitch-black, filthy dead-end alley. Under the faint moonlight, 2 drunken, tattoo-covered pieces of human trash had cornered a heavily pregnant woman against the wall. "Run, you filthy bitch. The fuck happened? Thought you could run." One of them, a bulky bald man, pulled a switchblade from his waistband and waved it across the pregnant woman's pale face. His eyes gleamed with disgusting lust. "Now take your clothes off. Right fucking now, or I'll kick that little bastard in your belly to pieces." At those vicious words, the pregnant woman went weak with terror. She clutched her swollen belly in despair as tears streamed down her face. "Hey, gotta say, boss, this hot little mama with the big belly's got a different kind of flavor than those skinny street sluts." The other man, his face covered in pockmarks, licked his lips and let out a filthy laugh. The 2 of them kept threatening her, and the beautiful woman kept sobbing. "Just fucking with you, bitch." The bald man's face suddenly twisted with malice. "I think I'll kick that kid in your belly to mush right now. Then I'll squeeze out some shampoo and make you service me while you bleed and scream." Ha ha ha. To be continued.